You are listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers Podcast, TV show deep dive bonus episodes. These were originally recorded as videos, but technical limitations kept us from getting them out to you, so we have retreated to the audio-only format of a podcast. I have done my best to remove the silences from when we were watching scenes and chaotic background noises, but otherwise not edited the content at all for coherent thoughts. As with our regular podcast episodes, you can find these ad-free through our Patreon at patreon.com/WoTSpoilers.
Welcome, everybody. We got a few people popping in. Has anyone checked out the edited version of the first episode we did, summary? We put that one out there.
It's gotten a couple hundred views so far. Several hundred? I think we might be into several territory. Oh, you just finished 5 minutes?
Well, just finished 5.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, what do you think? What do you think about the comparison? I know.
It was lovely.
It was lovely.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah, it's a lot. I didn't expect everyone to watch it to finish it.
It's a long video. And on that note, we are actually only doing part 1 of episode 4 today because we know this is going to be a big, long recording. And so we're actually going to split it up and give you guys slightly smaller
Hopefully we don't
bites.
go over 2 hours for the first half. Actually, I think I would bet we go about 2 hours for the first half.
Strongly agree with that. Yeah.
I made paper notes for once.
Whoa, going analog.
I know, right? Yeah. It's just a shame I can't read them.
So apparently one of our listeners has now gotten their therapist to listen to the podcast. This is excellent evangelism. Thank you, Kaltzar.
Can you get does that mean I can skip all the therapy part and I can just you know my life. Just go to them as my therapist. You've heard the podcast. You know 90% of my problems.
Right. Oh, Catherine K., thank you for saying that. I love to go back to rewatch the episodes after your deep dives. That is the content we want to make, for sure, is stuff that enhances the rewatches. It's a little weird doing something not knowing the end, for sure.
It is.
Our spoilers attitude is that we should know everything, and we don't, and that's a little different. But at the same time, how could we not try to talk about the show in our way? How could we not? We're fans first before we are podcasters, right? First and foremost, we are fans.
That's very true. Yeah.
So,
and what I found is I really like doing this because it helps me work out what actually happened in the episodes, right? That's what I'm doing is I'm actually trying to figure out what the hell happened? What are they trying to say? What does that imply? I'm a big fan of the spoilers take on this, mostly because, it kind of started sitting down and trying to figure out what actually happened in the books. And now we're trying to figure out, what actually happened in the show.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a good way to approach it.
So we should probably officially start this.
Yes. So yeah. Let's get it started.
Hello and welcome back. We're here to do WoT Spoilers podcast deep dive of episode 4 of the Amazon show, part 1.
Part 1, because as you've probably seen from episode 1, 2, and 3, and which we thought we could sit down, address those in a reasonable fashion, have a nice hour-long conversation about a nice hour-long show. We should know better. It takes us 3 hours to get through an hour-long show, so we're doing it in 2 parts. And that also because I think this one's going to take us longer than 3 hours to get through the whole thing. There was so much more in this episode than there were in the last 3.
So much.
That there was so much. So definitely splitting this in 2.
So with that, let's get into Giladon being on fire.
Not quite. We have an animated short to watch.
Right. I forgot about the animated short.
We're going to do that first. So this is Saidin, Saidar, and Stone. So
what is Stone?
I had that question for you, so let's pay attention and see if you can answer it, because I don't know.
Okay, let's do it.
So I just like that opening shot of Tarpaulin and the bridge and the River Aranon. So establishing...
It's just beautiful.
So we got Ogier Hands, Ball of Light. Also, this is our second brown sister lesson. Like, this appears to be a reoccurring theme of these animated shorts. Is it's a brown sister giving lessons to
She's
students.
like walking them around on the museum tour, being like, "This is the tower. You know, this is the official guided tour." And I am in love. I love it so much.
And on your left is, I don't know, Lewis Theron? I don't know. Yeah. You know, there's some bored students in the back, like, throwing peanuts, you know, I mean, like, whatever. We know this history.
Right. Love this shot.
The transition in the water.
And then just I don't even have, like, the words for it. But, yeah, the transition, the panning, the way it looks like a New York sky. It's just so gorgeous.
Also, our first real shot of the Age of Legends, right? First real, like, this is the Age of Legends that we get to see. Yeah, fantastic. Really important there, right? Showing the male and female working together, two sides of the same coin. This is all, again, straight from the book, mythology. They haven't changed it in the slightest from what Robert Jordan wrote, which is what I love about these animated shorts. They're even more true to the books than the show is.
Yeah, yeah. That visual is just straight out of the text. It's so intense. It is exactly the feeling that Robert Jordan gives you with his standard phrases to describe how it is to channel Saidin. Like that. It's so true to the text.
The chaos. I love the way they split it with the river, how there's two sides of the river and one side of the river is chaotic because of the stones underneath and the way the bank is, and the other side's deep and calm, but that's what sucks you under, you know? And like, yeah, the analogy with the water is fantastic, hiding the taint in the turbulence and being unable to escape from it. It is interesting. It implied, though, that if the female half was tainted, that because it wasn't turbulent, that maybe you could hide from it.
I didn't get that impression.
Okay. Just because A is true does not mean not A is true. Right. Or is not true, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I just, this visual, I feel like every time we're in Rand's head and he seizes the source and gets swept away in this turbulent, raging oceans of fire and blocks of ice, it's like, that's a visual representation of how that paragraph makes me feel. Same thing. Same fucking thing. It's like this floating ethereal on top of the world, no, like 0G kind of experience is like, that's so true to the text.
Yeah. Just this infinite pressure, though, because I also imagine, like, because it's so deep, you know, you go down in Saidar and get crushed by the depths, whereas Saidin is going to tumble you over and hit you against the rocks and bruise you and batter you until you die. It's like, you know, both kind of deaths, if you lose control, one sucks you down and crushes you in the depths, the other one batters you against the rocks.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's visually what we're seeing here.
Yeah, it's like, it is very gendered still, but it is so true to the text that, like, I don't even care. I love that they're making the text so alive and so real.
And then we get
the whole speech is straight out of Varen's mouth in Great Hunt.
Yep. And something that we got from Moraine when she was training Egwene, right? Like, that we didn't get in the Eye of the World. We didn't get that training montage with her.
No, we
saw her.
Yeah,
we saw the embracing the source and the three flashes, but we didn't see the whole embrace, you know, open yourself up like a rosebud. Like, she never explained that to Egwene. We skipped right over that.
No, we hear it again from Varen, but in this case, we're hearing it from this teacher who calls them all daughters. So I wonder if this is actually a brown Amerlin, or a woman who becomes Amerlin, like an early Amerlin. It's just, why would she call them daughters?
Well, don't they call all accepted?
They call them child, right?
Novices are child, accepted are daughters.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Never mind.
Aes Sedai are sisters.
Mind. I'm wrong about really basic stuff. I'm a fan.
This is an So yeah, this is just a normal Aes Sedai talking to a class of accepted.
Gotcha. Though in fairness, that lesson was probably being given to novices because it was how to touch the source, which accepted would already know.
Yes, except, you know, a brown Brown Sister might be like the first one to be, say, perhaps teach the same thing back to the novices over and over again, or to the accepted.
Going
like,
back to basics,
how many times does Nynaeve complain? Yeah, like how often does Nynaeve complain? Like, oh, they're making me do the Rosebud thing again. I'm an accepted. Like, I should know better, right? True. Like, so. Yeah. So, and if they were novices, they should have been children, right?
Right, and probably being trained by like an accepted.
Yeah. So any ideas about what the stone is after all that?
I saw in chat the idea that it is literally the island of Tarvalon splitting the river.
I thought that was a good idea. Yeah.
It's a better idea than anything I've thought of, because there are stones in the river, but none of them are important. The Stone of Tyr is not mentioned. The concept of being Quendiar or steel or a stone for emotional rigidity is not being mentioned. So I think it's all about the Aes Sedai and how they are changing the world by existing. I think. Gotcha. I think that is what they're going for. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
The island of Tarvalon sort of regulates and splits yeah. It's again that's not super clear to me as to what.
I'm not sure, but that's
what they're referring
the best I can. And that's the best chat has given us either. So
we're infinitely smarter than we are.
I should know. I used to be in chat.
Yes, that's why you're here. So let me just skip past the previously on really quick.
Yeah, because that's, great. Giladon on fire. Yes.
I will say the background music for the previously on, very intense. Very intense. Yeah, so great flashback. We ended the last episode with that shot of Logain, and now we get a flashback. Not the flashback I predicted. I thought we were going to Winter Night. I did not think we were flashing back for Logain. But it is another flashback, which supports my flashback theory.
It does, and I just love everything about the world building of Giladon. It seems like I was reading a little bit online, like maybe Giladon is being modeled on Spain. And that's really appropriate given that like Alvaro Morte is Spanish and is a movie star like in Spanish cinema. So like his accent works and his entire everything. It's just like.
Also geographically, if you lay France down on Cairhien, England generally down where
Andor?
Camelin and Andor are, and then put Spain would be sort of in that where Giladon is, give or take, like there is that sort of like if you overlaid Europe on top of Randland, they would kind of line up. There's a whole ocean in there too, but that's a different topic. So there's all these touches in the world building that made this a really fun scene. And the things I really love about the sequence are Logain's channeling, really. The physicality of his channeling and the way that it expresses itself. His performance as he gets Logain, I think. The charismatic leader who like actually has drunk his own Kool-Aid. Like but the way that he expresses channeling is my absolutely favorite part of this. I really like Giladon as the set, right? It feels different and real and like, oh yes, this is a different environment, but at the same time, the colors are more are vibrant, but vibrant in a different way, more orangey and tan as opposed to a emerald green that's going with the more foresty story. So I like the set design and the way they're creating a sense of place through color and design that is just, it's so good that I know instantly where I am when I'm not where we were when you come to Giladon. So we enter on this battle. Logain's attacking the King of Giladon in his castle, the King of Giladon. Assuming it's an ambush, we don't get much sense of how long this fight's been going on. I
suspect that what's been happening is he's been gathering a bigger and bigger army as he moves, and the king has been amassing defensive forces, and a long anticipated battle after many smaller skirmishes is finally happening. That's kind of how I just sort of assume Loghain's rise to prominence on the Giladon stage goes. And then he gets the King of Giladon on his side with the king's armies. And now he can start nation building as the dragon should.
Right. That right there, I mean, that's a shot we definitely saw in the trailers. But just that twitch of the finger is all he's doing to channel.
Go to 136. Exactly. Right? That's got a really cool picture of the weaves that come because of that twitch. That the way they come up like these like octopus tentacles almost in front of him and make this just shield that like bangs them away. There's so much of how weaves are made in this whole episode. This episode was really heavy on weaves, and I just
really heavy weave.
Absolutely love it. And I love how he just twitches his hand, but you can see that he's doing so much more with his mind. It's so cool.
It's so cool. And we're seeing the taint really for the first time here, right? We're seeing the way he weaves first with the white weaves of Sidene, and then they get over covered with the taint. They flow right behind it. Like there's just a split second where it's clean, and then the taint's just right there on top of it. And it's just great. Yeah. I'm really curious to see if they're just going to show them as white weaves once it's cleansed.
I am very interested if we ever are going to get colored weaves, when it gets, because they have to cleanse the source. Like that has to happen. That's a sort of indisputable event of the books you can't get away from. Like how then will they show men versus women? Will they not show a difference? Questions.
Also, for the end of this episode, spoilers, like Nynaeve's channeling is very blue, which is very different than the other channeling we've seen. We can talk about that when we get there. I love the 3-star, the way that the emblem and the way they implement it here. I don't know. They've just done a really good job of making these feel like a country, like Giladon and country.
The rimmed pot helmets.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about his costume for a second with the WWE wrestler belt, like championship belt?
The costume design for the show really digs belts a lot. They're really into belts, and I love his outfit, even if it is the most impractical belt I've ever seen. It's
belts, boots, and knives
and
are the three things that they keep showing off. Yeah, and earrings.
Yeah.
And arm cuffs.
Bracers?
What are those called? Bracers.
Yeah. It's interesting how the power either comes from behind or from above. Like those are the two directions that the power comes from. It doesn't come from inside. It comes from this external thing, which could come from any direction, but usually it's behind. And if not behind, then from above. I think that's an interesting choice on their part.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about is where does the power come from? Like when someone cuts you off from the power, how are they doing that? Is there a place? Is there a channel? Like when Nynaeve is healing, there appears to be something cut, a severed, a thread, that's, how do you fix that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cool choice. I'm into it. It's not how I envisioned it, but I don't know that I had a clear vision of how I envisioned it, so I'm fine with them making a decision.
Well, and I always saw it as coming from within, right? So, how do you show something being tapped from within your soul? You don't really, and how do you sever that? Well, you have to get very metaphysical with it, and I think that's what Jordan was thinking, but to do that on a show, it would be almost indecipherable as to what's going on. So I like the idea of cutting someone off from the source like he becomes this surrounding shield that cuts you off. It has to be 360. It has to cut you off from all directions. Great overhead shot showing where he's walking, and then he goes next to this well. What the hell is that thing?
What do you mean? It's a well in a very random place, but that symbol.
Is that a well? Yeah, that symbol. Yes. A circle with an S in it.
I saw someone initially say it was the Aes Sedai symbol, and then I got in there and looked at it. It's not, but it is clearly some kind of sigil symbol, and it's a really random place for a well. I guess it makes sense if it's a siege-proof fortress to have wells throughout the building, or it could be ceremonial. There could be some sort of kingly ritual about getting anointed with water from the well, that something.
Or it could be transportation for stuff up and down. This is high up. Does it have to be water that you're pulling up with the pulley and bucket?
Is it a cool-looking dumbwaiter?
Yeah. Exactly. Like, hey, you've got these people standing sentry out on your parapet.
Send up
right?
food.
Like, rather than having them, you send up food, you have a little thing. Like, yeah, that's all I'm wondering is, like, does it have to
There's
be
no
water?
reason that it has to be water. You are very right. That's probably the simplest explanation, honestly.
It's very out of place. Like, it's like this big open flat nothing, and then I don't know what this thing is in the middle.
I don't know
of
enough
that
about castle
space.
architecture to speculate what's going on there.
It does kind of look like a face if you look at those two arches as eyes and the thing hanging down as a nose.
Yeah, it kind of does. It kind of does. Yeah, I don't know. It's a trip. Nasty shoulder wound. Silver crown. Silver crown is not... I don't think we ever get a name for the crown of Giladon. It's a really, like, second place name.
Is that what he says? The silver crown?
My note-taking rewatch, I had the subtitles on, so I knew what was being said.
Yeah, no, I guess that is... I don't think we do have a name for the Giladon crown.
Yeah, we get a name for, like, who... Like, all the titles for the ruler, but I don't think we ever get the name. But I don't remember Silver Crown.
Do we know the name of this king?
I forget. Look at the x-ray. But, okay, Grace says no. Fire Phoenix in chat is saying, no, we don't. Yeah, okay, so this is a guy in... And it makes sense because he dies in the episode. Yeah, he literally dies in the episode, so it makes sense that he's not from the books.
Do we know who was the King of Giladon at the time that Logain became?
I don't remember if Roadron came to power after Logain or not. I don't remember.
King Johannan. Right, so, in the books, well, King Johannan was killed by Massima.
Well, that's after Logain's whole arc.
So that's long after Logain. So, but I'm assuming that he would have been the king at that time. So I'm going to make it up that this is King Johannan. And then there's a bunch of rulers after that when they're dealing with Massima. But as far as we know, he was king before Logain.
Cool. So that absolutely works for who this guy is. I never considered this question, but I'm going to headcanon that this is literally what was happening in the books. Because why not?
Why not? I'll give him a name. We'll call him, or that king will step up. There'll be another king of Giladon, and that'll be King Johannan, and we'll never get this guy's name.
Wait, chat's helping us out with a real-time follow-up. Johannan stripped Logain of his lands and titles when he declared himself as dragon. Okay, so this is... I have seen some good arguments against this is another turning argument, but this is one of those... The way things could have gone, like split path destinies, is like either he was going to join Logain or take away all of his lands and titles. In this version of the story, he joins Logain, but in the books, that's not what happened. But this is a moment that could have gone multiple ways.
I'm assuming he stripped him of his lands and titles before this battle.
Oh, that also...
So that very much could have worked.
Yeah, so maybe he does better in the battle in the books. This is just so far off screen that when they bring it forward, they can tell it however they fucking want. And it's just, I love seeing what a false dragon means through more than the most distant rumors. I like seeing it up close and personal in this version. That's fun.
And in the books, this character, if this is Johannan, dies in a hunting accident when trying to, hunting accident when dealing with Massima. Yeah.
It's
such a good line.
That's his first line, and I'm just like, hi. It's amazing. I think he gets Logain better than Logain ever got Logain, honestly.
He knows what he wants, which is power above and beyond that of a king. Power of a king doesn't really matter.
He thinks that he can save the world. He truly believes that, and he thinks that he deserves to own the world in response to that plan.
Well, duh. Look at that beard.
I mean, those locks. Like, come on. Those luscious locks.
So the other thing that makes me think that's not a water well is how would you get a bucket of water past those grates that's covering it? Right? So you've got this octagon well, and then you've got these two bars going across. Like, that's not a bucket of water wouldn't make it through the middle of that. But neither would anything else. Like, I'm very confused as to what's at the bottom of that well.
It must be hinged with like a pin on the top side, so that way they can like open it if they want. But otherwise, people can't crawl up and ambush them if they don't, want what they can see through the grate is coming up to them.
Okay. Nicholas is saying it is a water well.
Oh.
Apparently in we should have looked at real life castles. Yes. So apparently in real life, you Google that is a water well.
The real life castle. So this was actually filmed in a castle, is what I'm gathering from this comment. Alcazar de Segovia. In Spain. This is literally a castle in Spain, and it is a water well on top of a castle in Spain. This is not a set. This is a location.
So here's my question. Is that metalwork always over that well? Or is that just a really good coincidence?
That's a very specific question.
And from what I can tell based on Google Images, that metalwork is there already. Yep, I can see an image right here. So yeah, standard tourist thing shows that Aes Sedai looking symbol right there on the top. I wonder why. That has to have been why they decided to use that space.
Yeah, they're like, that's too cool. We need to shoot next to that. That's just, cool. We're making it work. Make it work, writers. Make it work. Oh, that's super cool. Yay for follow-up in chat.
Yeah, thanks for finding that for us. Did you hear that? Be done with it, Logan? That was one of the voices in his head.
One of his voices. We don't get a name for the other voice, as far as I know.
Not for the male voice. There's a male and female voice.
Alicia's the female.
Assuming they're past lives of his.
Boots.
The boots. The boots.
Boots.
What do you think about that line? They should be following me, not fighting me.
I love that it sets up some of the tension with Rand and the Aes Sedai later, because you need the Aes Sedai to follow you, Rand. You need that. That is something that so many people tell him and that he fights against so hard. And I love that they're giving it to us here with this very compelling dragon. Like, the Aes Sedai need to be on board. And that's a lot of the message of this whole episode, is that the Aes Sedai and the dragon cannot be at odds. And he gets that. Rand does not get that. And I mean, maybe he'll get that in the show, but then the show will only be like 3 seasons long. We need its communication in order for the seasons to last. So yeah, that's what I think.
All right. So I think with a good wig, I'd pull off a decent Logain.
You've got the beard? Yeah.
I got brown eyes. Yeah. Just a little bit of...
basically a doppelganger.
I might have to cosplay that. Well, I'm also... My dad's Spanish. Right? So, from Spain. So there's a lot, I feel like there is some...
That actually would work then, yeah.
Genetics. Yeah. And that's the really key point, is like, that's why, weep for your salvation, all that kind of stuff. Like, he's just as likely to save it as to break it. He's going to, in a lot of ways, do both. He's going to break the countries.
Yeah. I really like that Logain has such an educated grasp on what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'd love to know. One of the things I hope they give us is more of his backstory, right? Because we don't get a lot about Logain other than he's managed to channel for a long time and not go insane. And everyone's like, why? What? How? Like, what was he doing all that time? He wasn't building up his army. He wasn't declaring himself the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
So, and yes, we do get that line where, from his insane voices that Fire Phoenix is pointing out, your sister turned against you and your parents. So right there, that's more backstory than we ever get in the books. We get family and we get betrayal.
I'm loving getting to see him, and they are going to give us more of his backstory. They have to. They're setting us up to expect more. They have to give it to us.
They're making him such a larger part of the story. Just that he's beneath you, kill him. He's resisting the taint.
Yeah, he's actually a good person. This whole sequence is when I was like, I kind of wish he was the Dragon Reborn. I'm rooting for him. Like, this is when I started to root for him. Like, first I'm like, man, he's just sexy and channels in a cool way. This is when I started to root for him and his arc and know that, like, by the end of the episode, I'm going to feel really bad for him. This is when I started to root for him.
Nice. That was definitely a trailer shot where we saw the dagger. I'm going to go back just a second. there.
So good.
So good, yeah. And then I expected him to turn it around and have him stab himself, right?
Expected that.
Fully expected that, right? Like, what I really love is how many times in this episode I was like, oh, they're doing that. Oh, no, they're not. Like, that, they did a really good job of subverting my expectations in this episode, because I really, really, really thought that dagger was about to be turned on the king himself.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Basically,
oh my God, so good.
Especially after that, like, voice in his head telling him to kill it. Like, yeah. And yeah, someone said, good job, King actor. You did a good job of being afraid.
Yeah.
Like, it takes someone being realistically afraid to make Logain look so badass.
Yeah. And then he drops him to his knees like this. And I'm like, okay, so he's going to kill him another way. I believe that. And then he does it. And I'm just like, oh my God, I want to follow this guy.
Right? You have, and my axe, right?
Yeah.
And then that I like made a noise when that face came on, when it wasn't just a voice and it wasn't an actor, when it was a CGI tainted figure whispering in his ear. Oh.
Me too. I think I also audibly squeed. Yep. Just like this episode made me do that several times. This was the first time, second time. Yeah. I
don't know. Squeeze happened. But again, all about, we're going to see LTT, right? We're going to see he's going to be a voice, then he's going to be a tainted version, then he's going to be a tainted CGI version of the actor, and then it's going to be the actor. And I cannot wait for they're dropping LTT hints all over the place.
So excited.
Ouch. Yeah, so we don't get a name for the male part guy, but he claims they're all past versions of himself, past versions of the dragon.
Which is fascinating. I'm so curious if that's true. So is that
LTT?
Or not. Like, how is this going to manifest with Rand? Is it going to manifest with other Ashaman? Like, how much is this uniquely Logain, and how much is this how they're choosing to express madness across the board?
Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm aware, Logain's madness comes down to his inability he needs power, right? He's so insecure. Thinks that he's vulnerable, that in the books, what he wants is more power, right?
I mean,
like, that's sort of his madness.
Is it, or is it just a trauma response to how much shit he's had to go through?
Right. And we do only see that after he goes through the conversion in the Black Tower. So there is some of that, like, maybe the madness he's experiencing then has more to do with the corruption and the 13 Murderall type situation rather than the taint. So
I never really got a sense of what Logain's madness that he was resisting was. I don't feel like we really ever got anything of that. It's like he just didn't get tainted. Yeah. Which obviously doesn't make sense. So I love the fact that they're filling in something that he's talking with and engaging with and holding back because he can reason with it. That plugs that plot hole, which is nice.
It does. I think what Jordan was going for is just like, yes, it's entirely random how long it is before the taint hits you, and Logain just rolled a lucky 7, and it took forever for him to actually be tainted. Like, some people are tainted, the first few days they use it. Some people first year. Logain just happened to be 10, 20 years worth of taint before it really got to him. So I just think that's, when you look at the bell curve, I think Logain was just always at the far end of the bell curve is what Jordan was trying to say with him. But I like it better that he is tainted, that he is insane, that it is not inevitable.
Yeah.
Or that it is inevitable, I should say.
And if these are his past lives, but see, he's not the Dragon Reborn. So are these his past lives, or are these past dragons, or are these taint puppets entirely?
I think they're entirely taint puppets, insanity. I don't think, unless they're changing the mechanics of how the taint works, that it gives everyone access to past lives. That's what I'm wondering. And that maybe that guy in the first shot, the person next to him, maybe that was one of his past lives he was talking about. They looked a lot alike. Just an older version of himself, maybe after he'd aged up and died. So maybe that is what the taint does. But I don't like it. I like that the Dragon Reborn is special because it's his past life that actually comes forward, whereas everybody else is just nuts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We do say Samurag is like, a lot of people hear their past lives, and if they're real, that makes it even worse.
Right.
So it is canonical in book that some people do actually hear their past lives.
Right. Yeah. And
but that makes it harder to integrate.
Yeah. I do like, though, that he at least believes that he's had past lives as a woman, that souls don't have gender. If he truly believes this, whether or not it's real, it tells us that little bit about the world, that souls being reborn as either gender is like part of how they understand reincarnation. And I like that just being tossed out as a little bit of building up the world more.
Yeah, I love that. And that way, you know, you're not necessarily tied to Saidar or Saidin, your whole rebirth cycle. Yeah,
I'm hoping that I'm interpreting that right. And I like it.
I think you are. I think there really are in-world making it canonical that souls are reborn as both male and female, and everybody just knows that. Which it does kind of mean like, oh, if I'm going to be born a female in my next life, maybe I should be nicer to women type situation. Like there is a certain amount of like helps with the equality. If you think in your next life, you might be the other side of that coin, supposedly.
It's an interesting thing to watch as the show goes on.
Yeah.
And then my conversion was complete.
I love that you think, you're like, you're like, oh, he's killing him. No, he's healing him.
And it's like, I now am a complete Logain stan. I am now absolutely rooting for him.
And so is the king.
Yeah, it's like, I'm right there with the king. Like, he's the best.
We'll just ignore all the hundreds and hundreds of soldiers he slaughtered to get to the king, but, you know, whatever. I hope we see Rand use that line on Logain. When he recruits Logain to be part of his Black Tower.
Yeah.
He's going to beat him. They're going to fight. He's going to say, I'm your enemy. And Rand's going to say,
oh, he totally
there's room for anyone by my side, even my enemies. And that's how he's going to recruit Logain.
Oh, my God. Yes. I absolutely am betting on that with you. Yep. Bind it? What does...
And in the darkness, bind them.
Yeah, bind it feels like the wrong approach to me. It's like that. Like I feel like you need to work on the binding it plan. That's not the approach that you need.
No. Yeah, it's not destroy the world. I think what he's trying to say is like, imagine like yoking oxes together to go all in the same direction, right? Right now, everybody's pulling in different directions and nobody's going anywhere. So bind the world to fight the last battle, bind it together. Rand thinks about doing that a lot when he's like, I need to unite all the countries. What he's doing is binding them together to be ready to fight the last battle. So not destroy them, bind them together. I get that.
Yeah, I was also thinking too of like Egwene's dream later where there's like ropes holding together a big, huge Aes Sedai symbol. And like Rand is like cutting it apart and she wants to hold it together, or like Cadsuane's embroidery of a fist clenching a thing. And so it's like binding as in not breaking, but also like it needs to be broken.
The north must be bound to the west. The south must be bound to the east. The two must be as one. So there's also the prophecy that he may be referencing. Yeah. So but I feel like that's kind of your first clue that he's going about it slightly wrong. And if Rand goes that way, then that's not going to work so well. And probably Rand will go exactly that way. And Logain always sort of made that like, I think Moraine's like, well, you weren't born on Dragonmat. And he's like, hey, you know, I can write it so that I could have been. You know, you never, like, the winners write the histories.
I think that's Rand and Tyene, but yes. Exactly that point.
Tyene, not Logain. Yeah. That like, I'll make the prophecies work for my life, not the other way around.
Which I always saw as a really great dig at certain religions, which made me chuckle, given where RJ was physically coming from.
And that takes us to the intro, which I will skip over here.
Yeah. There are stars at the end, though. At the very end, it's like a horizon with stars overhead, and I think there's more stars every time. I think it's mint sparks. That's how I'm choosing to interpret it.
Where? What part is that?
Right at the very, very end, when the two dots come together and make a line. There.
So the stars overhead.
Yeah, and I feel like there's been more each time. And I feel like it's mint sparks. And
because when we look here, which is almost the matching line, it's just a line in darkness, no stars. But then we go forward and we go through this whole thing. A little late on that, but now we can see all those stars above. Let me just pull up, since we are doing this, For example, I guess I have to do episode 2 because we don't get it in episode 1. So let's just do a quick comparison here. White cloaks, white cloaks, white cloaks. The intro. It looks exactly the same. Honestly, even with a quick comparison, it was the exact same dots and the exact same placement.
Okay.
So
fine.
I think it's the exact same intro.
Well, it's still stars.
It's still stars, yes. But this very much, yeah, the place of dreams, the world of dreams here could be interesting.
That might make more sense, yeah.
Not every theory pans out, unfortunately.
Greens.
Greens and reds.
Greens and their waters.
It makes sense. Greens and their waters, yes. And red, but like it makes sense the greens and reds getting together to take down men who can channel. Yeah. The battle Aja and the you know, that it did in the books. I was always very upset. I was like, why are these two Ajas, you know, close? It doesn't make any sense. The green love men and the red hate men. But it's like, no, they both have a similar goal, which is to protect the world. You know, Aja, the red has a very particular enemy they're focused on, but the green, yeah, there's battles. That's the whole thing. The green are kind of specifically meant as a counter to dreadlords. Like that's kind of specifically, you know, the reds are specifically about policing channelers, primarily men, but as we learned from Leandrin in this episode, like that very much, and from Karenni, that very much applies to women as well. Like the reds police channelers, the greens are the counter to evil channelers. Like those are two different pieces of dealing with the fact that channelers can be a hazard. So yeah, it makes total sense that they work together, despite having such different attitudes towards interpersonal relationships. What do you think about the idea as the reds being internal affairs? I mean, someone's got to do it. And it seems like with the decreasing number of men who can channel over time and the huge size of the red Aja, they either have almost no purpose aside from self-aggrandizement, or they are filling a very necessary gap in Aes Sedai society, which is being police who can, like, say, go after people like the Daughters of Silence. What if the Daughters of Silence decide they want to use defensive weaves? Like, reds would be logical people to be going into that situation. It's just unfortunate the red and the black align so well in their motivations. As we see, it's a bummer. As we see with Leandrin, where it's like, are you? Wait, you know, is she red or black? Yes. You know, what's driving her, what she wants to do? Yes. Like, both. Which is true for a lot of the Black Aja that we see in the books. Like, a huge amount of them are still very loyal to their reasons for joining their Aja, or even the heads of their Aja whenever possible. I love white dark friends. It's just logical. I mean, that's what Dina was, basically. Dana. Dana was basically a white dark friend. It's Ishamael, right? Yep. So there's just a couple of costume bits to talk about here. Obviously, the hijabi red sister is just fabulous and wonderful. That's just great. I've seen that getting praised for representation. Just like, yeah, they're just there. This episode has a lot of representation. It's very good. Yeah. I just, their outfits are all amazing. I wish we got names for these other three Aes Sedai. We only know Leandrin. I wasn't able to find a name of any of the other ones. I am choosing to believe that the one over my left shoulder is Teslan. Yeah. I'm choosing to believe that. That's fair, yeah. But we don't know that. That's just me. She takes a couple of arrows during the battle and gets healed. Yeah, her and the bowl cut woman both are quite badass during that battle. And that's fun to see them being so engaged in battle. That's really fun. I enjoy that. Is she just watching him? Yep. She is short and she is pissed. She is so naive. Yeah, because she's like, why are we not? This is naive entirely. Why are we not going after my villagers? you promised me we would. We should be going after them right now. Like, that's her basic, like, what are you doing? Relaxing.
Yeah.
And finally, we get our Moraine back. We've been missing her for 2 episodes, so it's nice that this one opens with her getting up on her feet again and being back in full health. How do you feel about the scar?
I love it because it was evil poison that she survived for days and days with tons of poking and prodding, and it was untended, and healing has its limits, and wounds that don't get treated right away scar. So I'm very happy with the scar.
Karine.
I am not happy about Karine.
Yeah.
It's Karine.
Yeah. You never pronounced the E on the end. No. I'm not a fan.
I love the character. Hate the name pronunciation they went with. But, oh well.
What do you think about bringing her forward from New Spring?
Okay, so I looked her up because I didn't remember anything about her at all. She was Captain General of the Green.
And I would assume she still is.
And so I'm assuming she still is. And she is a seeker for the Dragon Reborn because she is a stickler for the law above all else. That is why she gets picked by Tamra. So if we assume that she didn't die and she ended up getting sent on this wild goose chase for some reason, and she is still the head of the Green Aja, and she is still a stickler for the rules. We see that. And she knows to some degree the magnitude of the times they live in. And then she dies in this episode. So that is more or less her entire arc from New Spring.
Yes.
Just adjusted along the timeline to pack into one episode. And she expresses so much about Aes Sedai as an institution. She gives us so much of the texture of how Aes Sedai interact. All the Aes Sedai interactions in this episode are really true to the texture of what it's like to read Aes Sedai interactions in the book to me. And she, being an older Aes Sedai, being from earlier in the timeline, she's really like, this is the institution of Aes Sedai.
She represents the conservative institution that's been around forever, the right way to do Aes Sedai.
Very Ramonda and Lelaine.
Romaine. You know, she is green.
Yes, and she is green, like romaine lettuce. So yes.
I guess she's supposed to be Kandori, according to Fire Phoenix.
Yeah, which is not in the books. In the books, she doesn't have a nationality. Her name just sounds Borderlander, so they tightened up her story. Also in the books, she apparently had 2 borders, and in this, she appears to only have 1. So I'm curious if we're going to discover that she had a warder away from her at the time, who's going to show up at some point in a warder death rage. Or if she just only has 1. Like, I'm very curious about that.
Let's talk about that warder death rage when we get to it. Interesting, it does seem to still hurt a little bit.
Well, probably because there's just a deep ache that will never go away. I mean, Frodo describes that when he gets healed from his wound in Elrond's thing. It's like he always has a bit of a like weather shoulder, you know? So I imagine that Moraine will have a weird little just something.
What's on the like right next to my head? It looks like this little jewelry box, and then in front of it looks like a spindle with 2 poles next to it.
Something.
Yeah, curious what that is.
Yeah, that's a interesting artifact. I am no idea.
So he's straining them this whole time. She's not in the room. She's still holding the shield. Do you think Logain is sandbagging?
I don't think she's holding the shield currently because they're taking it in shifts of 2. And there's 2 in the cave currently.
So, but he wasn't actively pushing against her at that point? She wasn't actively being strained? No. Okay. That was just her being tired overall?
Yeah.
Okay, because I interpreted that as like she was like he was actively pushing against her while she was healing. And that's what caused the strain.
Yeah, no, I think it's just that she's running on fumes just in general because of how much effort he's been taking out of them. And it's weird when Moraine goes to Logain, she says she's rested enough to take over a shift. And that's right after this, as far as I can tell. And where did she get the energy from?
I honestly think healing in this world seems to not tire the healed. The energy seems to come from channeling.
That would be simpler.
That there's no exhaustion, there's no eating a bunch of food afterwards. It's just like healing makes you feel better. Like you're not exhausted, you're not broken, you're not wounded anymore, you're just healed.
That's a lot simpler.
Because I haven't seen any evidence.
I could see that.
No one, after Nynaeve healed everybody, no one got up and was like, and you can argue that Nynaeve's healing was different, but like, we've seen that here. We've seen it when she healed like Tam. Tam just was like, okay, getting up. There was no.
Well, also, I would argue that at the end of Nynaeve's healing, the episode ended. So we could very well open with the next one being like, and we've eaten all of our food for 2 weeks.
Fair. But all those Aes Sedai got up and were immediately like, oh, right, kicking ass, right? Like.
Well, they had to.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not sure. I'm curious if we see anyone having the food thing, but I can totally see the exhaustion just being something they omitted because it's too complicated to do it. What I like about this whole sequence is that she immediately doubts everything that she has believed up until this point, and is like immediately re-examining every one of her assumptions in light of, is it actually Logain? I love that.
Right, if the Dragon Reborn is actually Logain. Like, did she make a mistake?
Yeah, even though she's totally convinced she didn't,
well, he's too old.
Suspends that judgment.
He's too old. And
but she is, she's like, what if I fucked up? Like,
Nynaeve's too old too.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like Moraine she can't trust anything she knows.
I think that we're getting less difference between men channeling and female channeling. We're not getting the 1-to-7 ratio that we kind of got. Like, I think men and women in the show are going to be more equal power than men being, an order of magnitude above the women.
Yeah, I agree. Also, can you go back just a tiny bit to 8:57? Is this the shot of the room? Sorry.
No, that's fine. I wish this thing was a little more fit. That's 8:57 there. Yeah.
This is the best shot I could find of just like what is going on in this room. There's these pillars, right, that have what looks like Old Tongue text on them, but they're broken off. And there's all this sand on the floor. Why is there sand on the floor? Why is the floor covered in sand? And then the walls and the roof look like natural rock, like a natural cavern that just has potholes coming through it, or, roof holes.
But it's in the middle of a forest.
But it's in the middle of a forest. Fun fact. So remember when I said I thought there were karst landscapes in episode 1? So they actually described a karst landscape when describing this set. In the extras on the website, they actually described this landscape that they're in as karst, which means limestone, heavily eroded limestone. So a cave like this with holes in the ceiling of the cavern is in the middle of a forest absolutely makes sense in limestone country. Like, that's totally a thing. But these pillars are not a natural formation, and it just doesn't make sense with them being in a cave that's natural. Like, so many questions about these ruins that they built that they're just not explaining.
No.
They're not explaining any of it.
And that's kind of Wheel of Time, is the idea is that there's lots of ruins scattered around from old civilizations that it doesn't make sense. I don't know why someone would design this ruin to be there. Nobody knows, because it's an ancient civilization and we found it and we're staying in it because it's shelter and it's a decent place to stay. But yeah, nobody here knows why it's like this. It's weird. It's out of place. That's, I think, by design.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so, and the whole, it takes two of us to shield him. I think he's pushing just hard enough to tire two people out. I think that when he decides to break out, he could do it at any time.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me that they seem to not be, linking to do this. They link later to still him, to gentle him, but they don't appear to be linking to shield him. It appears like they're each putting a different shield on him, which I don't...
It's not how it worked in the books. There was only ever one shield on somebody. No one could shield and then add another shield on top. That was different. But I see why they're doing what they're doing, which is they're saying like, oh, well, we just put... This is more like the way in Dumai's Wells, the different men put up the different parts of the shield and they then butted them together rather than linking. Like, that's what this feels like to me, is like they're each like holding half of, like, geometrically half of the shield.
Right. So, yeah, it's just, I'm not upset that they're changing the lore. I'm just very curious about, like, if they're reinterpreting canon or if they're actually changing it for better storytelling. And, like, only time will tell as we learn more of how they're doing it throughout the season, which is going to make the rehash, the spoilers video series so fascinating.
It could also be that, you know, in order to change who's controlling the circle, you have to drop the circle. And so you couldn't be linked, you know, you'd have to unshield him to pass the shield to a new person. Maybe that's why they're not doing it linked. And that's that whole like, oh, I'll put my shield in place before you take yours off type situation.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. And I'm very curious to see how this informs Dumai's Wells. There's so many pieces of this that I'm like, how is the box and Dumai's Wells and that whole sequence going to be informed by the lessons learned here?
And Dana, I'm not sorry. Dana's like, you are wrong. I'm not talking about the shield on Rand. I'm talking about the shield the Ashaman put up overhead, the physical overhead lightning protection, the dome, not the shield. I probably should have said the dome, not the shield.
Yes, being yelled at by Chad is a fun time. But yeah, this is just, this ruin is fascinating. And so the next thing I have is wondering what this beef is between Leandrin and Moiraine. Like, there is so much baggage between Leandrin and Moiraine in this show that I don't think exists in the books. And I want all the details.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a relationship. Yeah, I don't know.
A plan after your own heart. We snuck in and it's just like, what are you referencing?
There's a lot of history about Moiraine breaking rules in this too.
And being inscrutable. Yeah.
So he shouldn't be able to hear. Which begs the question, how does he know when to break out? And
what is he grinning at a bit later on? There's a moment when he grins and there's little whispery, voicey sounds. And I'm wondering if, like, his hallucinations can't bring him information, but he could believe that they were.
Someone mentioned he did heal the king, and we don't know if you can sense someone who you've healed. So maybe he sensed him getting closer.
Oh,
like
I like
canonically
that.
In the books, right?
Like, I like that. I like that a lot. But somehow he knows that they're going to come after him. He knows, maybe he just knows when. Maybe he's just keeping time in his head and he knows how long it's going to take them to get to a place of his choosing to be rescued because they're in this strategically impractical bowl.
But I do think that, I think something triggered him, right? I don't think the timing was a coincidence of when he attacked. Whether it was something Leandrin did, whether it was the wards going off, I don't think he would have sensed those because those would have been just weaves. Or whether he's just reading lips, right? He's got his ears stopped up, but doesn't his eyes aren't.
His eyes are closed.
Yeah.
I agree that I think he's seeing more than they're giving him credit for, because Aes Sedai are arrogant and they underestimate men who can channel as poor fools. Right?
Or just men in general.
Right. He's a smart person who has anticipated, I think, to a certain extent, what this is going to look like and knows that his people are coming. He knows they're coming.
Kind of reminds me of Moiraine and Nynaeve in the White Cloaks. singing to the camp, a little bit of lightning, making all the horses run, right? Like, it's just, it's rescuing people. It's not exactly the same as, but again, remixing the story, telling the same story from a different point of view, from a different character.
Can we just, her hair is, I love her hair. It's not what I imagined from the books. The books was definitely, I was imagining a hairstyle that was super into cultural appropriation territory.
Something that looked a little more like Nynaeve's, just with blonde hair.
Yeah, and all straight and loose.
Yeah.
The way that it is with Nynaeve at the end after it's all exploded.
Exactly. Yeah, that
which
sort of.
It didn't work in my head. I'm really glad they went for not that for this. I'm not sure where this kind of hairstyle falls on the problematic spectrum. I know that I fucking love it when
it's
shows do this kind of hair. It's really common in the shows that I enjoy looking at, which tend to be historical period dramas and fantasy. So I just love her hair.
Yeah, people are saying it's a very Viking hairstyle.
Exactly, which Viking, Last Kingdom. Yeah, it's that kind of hair.
I'm also seeing a lot more like undercuts in fantasy, like on women, like we saw that on Lila.
Right, or in The Expanse.
Yep.
Yeah, which is basically when I started wearing an undercut, was when I saw The Expanse. I've never understood the concept of a trial when there's only one possible verdict for a man who can channel. I've never understood it in the books. I don't understand it in the show. I understand her enforcing it because she's a rule follower, but it just doesn't make sense to me why the concept of a trial even exists.
So you don't channel the Dragon Reborn by accident? Or you don't gentle the Dragon Reborn by accident? Or
that actually does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually does make sense.
Or, what if he's not a channeler? Like someone like Elias, right? Like, you have a trial and you're like, oh yeah, he can't actually channel. Why would you gentle him, right? Like, as opposed to the Reds just trying to gentle him on the spot. Like, what if they're wrong?
Well, I mean, you can't gentle someone who can't channel, so.
Yeah, that's always what happens. Like, I guess that doesn't work.
I think it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's Elias was like, yeah, I'm not gonna let him try. Like,
and then he kills people over it, which I've never understood. Like, it would literally not hurt you. Like, why would you kill your colleagues over being inconvenienced? That seems a little dramatic.
Well, I assume that I think he thinks that when the gentling didn't work, they'd do something else to him.
Well, that's uncharitable, but not necessarily in an undeserved way, given how the Reds behave. How?
Yeah, so she doesn't say I'm well rested. She's like, I've got enough strength. Like, the healing was good enough. I'm strong enough.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah.
And she is.
So she's like, hi, I have Korean's strength. I'll take her shift, basically.
Right. And she is that strong. Moraine is technically the strongest Aes Sedai in the tower at this point, right?
Is she? She's up there for sure.
I mean, Codswain, but Codswain's dead, that sort of thing.
Right.
Dead.
Yeah.
And yeah, Kareen is certainly up there. I guess technically Kareen's not dead yet.
She's one of the strongest.
Yes.
Before she dies. And that's according to Codswain's impression of her. So she's very, very strong. Yeah. I think it's interesting that she...
And technically, Moraine's been resting for days. She's just been resting and sick.
She was fighting off I don't consider that rest. I mean...
But maybe with channeling
maybe she took a nap.
Yeah.
Before Kareen took her over there. Maybe there's just like a 4-hour time where she took a nap.
There's certainly time passing the series that they're not showing us. Like, there are days and days, if not weeks of travel in here that we're just glossing over. So
maybe there's just a nap in general.
But, like, we looked at the map and it's like, there's no way they're getting from here to there in 24 hours, 48 hours. Like, it kind of feels like they're doing. Like, they're definitely traveling. They're either skipping travel time or just ignoring that, like, days have to go by to travel that distance on foot. Yeah. But I love Kareen, just everything about her here. Again, the physicality of how she channels. She's just this brick shit house, like she's just this huge immovable object, just like settling in and sinking pylons. And she would be amazing in a Broken Earth adaptation role. She would rock a Broken Earth, like orogeny channeling thing. I see her as like Book Tam, like that solid presence that just like is dependable.
Yeah. She's she's got 2 really cool earrings. Her hair braids are super, super neat. She's of a larger size. She's not rail thin like most Hollywood people. She's just this incredible, like, it's sad that she dies, but I'm glad she dies because she's being brought forward from New Spring and it makes more sense to, you know, like bring her forward and axe her. But she makes such an impression on the plot and creating space for Stepan to have meaning because he's kind of saltine, whatever. And I'm just in awe of her performance this whole episode. And what is that line about?
Selfless to a fault.
Again, with the baggage, Leandrin has been burned by Moiraine, and she is still holding that grudge.
Well, in a lot of ways, Leandrin is the ultimate bad guy Aes Sedai, and Moiraine is the ultimate good guy Aes Sedai, right? Like, they're as black and white as they get in terms of, like, Moiraine really is held up to be, you know, by the end of the series, the penultimate Aes Sedai. Right, the one who accomplishes everything. She discovers the Dragon Reborn. She takes out a Forsaken. She, you know, comes back to fight the Dark One and help Rand do that, you know? And then there's Leandrin, who's betrayer, dark friend, evil, manipulative, right? Like, the one who betrays our 2 girls to the sea folk and enslaves them. Who's, you know, she's a slaver, Shan-Chan. She's a slaver, basically, right? She's evil. She's terrible. So, I like the contrast between them. That right there, I think, is the coolest way that we've seen flows and the power flowing into her be differentiated from weaves that are coming out of her hands. Yes. Right? We've really seen, like, that really shows the difference between the two. We've seen a lot of the flows go into flows, but that weaving is different. That is much more like what I imagined we'd see with channeling.
Yeah, this whole thing's so cool. Also, notice how she had to take her gloves off because hand dexterity is actually very important for channeling, which builds into why the White Cloaks are the way they are.
I also really like that she makes a miniature version in front of her to control the larger version around Logain.
Yeah, I really like that mechanic.
I like the evaporating weaves as she releases the weave, and it doesn't, you know, she's not unraveling it. It's just, you can see the residue of it forming there. I like the way the weaves go into his skin. I thought that was really great. I like the way it didn't interact with the bars, right? So
it's
we
not
know
a
that the shield,
after all. I thought it was, and nope, definitely not.
Definitely not. But I feel like that foreshadows too that Stepan's axes pass through the shield, right? They don't interact with the shield at all. Just the way the bars of the cage do. It's only Logain's channeling that stops the axes.
Right. Yeah. Very, very true. I also like that they are physically straining to hold the shield. Like, again, with the embodied physicality of channeling. Like, in the books, they do mention that there is grunting and sweating associated with channeling difficult things, but it's often just a very small detail. And in this medium, that becomes a much more like in your face part of the experience. And I'm enjoying that. It makes me feel like I can channel too.
and it also adds to the acting, I think, that they can indicate when they've taken on a burden, right?
Yeah.
Or released one in this case.
That's like a quarter of his power.
I was just saying, I don't think it's even that much. I really do think he's sandbagging this whole time.
I mean, probably it's what they're feeling right now together is half his power.
Right. That's sort of what I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't know that. It's not.
And meaningful. Getting him when he was unconscious, they probably had more than 2 at a time. They I imagine that everyone shield. I don't know. I imagine when he's originally taken, it was much harder for him to just escape. Either if he was unconscious or they had more channelers there, or his army ran, and like he knows he can't take on 7, 8, however many Aes Sedai, right? Like that's so he's just waiting for an opportunity where they're either distracted by his army or half of them leave. But he can definitely take on 2.
Ivan is making food.
You're still dropping that shoulder because it still hurts. Moraine he's feeling Moraine's shoulder hurting. That's what's going on there.
I was wondering if that was what was going on there, because that doesn't seem like a Lan thing to do. But there's a couple of things in this episode that really drive home the physicality of the bond, which is fun.
And it seems to flow both ways.
Yeah, I love the whole thing about him drinking affecting her. I'm so glad that they brought that from Elaine and Brigida.
Because it was so different happy. With two women, right? And they appear to be bringing that. Yeah.
They got rid of that distinction. They just made that an across the board thing because it's fucking hilarious. And, it pleases me so much.
Yeah.
Also, these rocks are cool. Limestone. Awesomeness.
The Armelin seat still seated. Not for long.
It suggests that was in question.
That does.
As it should be.
Yeah. And I like it. Yeah, a lot of problems, not enough Aes Sedai to handle them, right? That does seem to be the state of affairs in the world. Lots of things going wrong. So yeah, just that communication between Suan and Moraine when she's frustrated with, like... I think she plays up how angry she is at Moraine because they are such good friends and are conspiring together. I think there's a little bit of her being like, when she gets a little frustrated, she lets it out. Yeah,
go up just to where they freeze and are in their little pose there. That's a really good still. So we can talk about. I think that there is a certain level of subtext that is being communicated. Because they are conspiring together, and the warders are mostly ignorant partners in communicating it, but they know that they're helping communicate, even if they don't know what they're communicating. Like,
how into the Dragon Reborn do you think Karini is and Stepan? Like, how much they know about Moraine's quest and Suan's involvement with each other? Like, do you think that's entirely, as Captain General of the Green?
She was a seeker for Tamra Ospenya. She would have been brought in. She was brought into the search for the Dragon Reborn 20 years ago. Which means if she's alive here...
Yeah. Is she, though? Is she? Because then wouldn't she be dead? Like, is the change that she wasn't brought in, or is the change that...
I don't know, but I suspect she's been brought in because she was... I suspect she was brought in more recently. Because she was brought in 20 years ago in book canon. I suspect that she is some amount of aware. I don't think she's fully aware because only Moraine and Swan know everything. Also, can we just talk about his axes?
Can we? Yeah. What about them? You like them?
No.
Yeah.
They either look like props that he just got from Props R Us, or they made a very deliberate decision to have that be how you represent power wrought metal, that it looks like it's literally never been used once in its life. I'm not a fan
of how shiny it is.
How shiny is it? It looks like it's never been scratched. It's never been used. Aside from the fact that, according to people who know things, that's a stupid desigine for an axe from a mechanical perspective.
Anything that hits the bottom is going to make it wobble or shatter, right? Like, yeah.
I'm just like, this feels too much like D&D cosplay self-insert. I appreciate Stepan's character. I like what he's done with the character. I do not like this prop.
I would be happier if the axe is connected on bottom. Back to the handle. If there was a cutout, fine, but if they connected back, on one level, I'm like, yes, from a practical perspective, it's dumb. On another level, I'm like, they're trying to make him a unique character. They're giving him unique weapons. That's how the warders stand out, so they're not all generic swordsmen, right? Like, let's give them their own preferred weapons, so we don't have... Because, like, basically in the books, all warders are swordsmen. There aren't any axeman warders. As far as I know, no one carries an axe. Everyone carries a sword. Like, that is what the warders do. So it is very much trying to give him this personality that makes him stand out from the general background warder. And it's a decision they made. And, I can see why they did it. Again, I think the execution could have been slightly better on the props to make them look less like something you would buy at a costume shop.
Yeah, fortunately, Logain agrees with us and destroys the axes at the end of the episode, so we don't have to deal with it anymore.
So that's the other reason why I think the axes look so weird. They are this really important artifact in what happens in the show, in the healing of, like, they have to be something unique and different, and they have to shatter different. If it was just a sword, I feel like it would have... You wouldn't have had the spray in both directions. You would have had just one sword shattering.
Coming in. There's such a thing as axe warriors that had practical weapons. I would have loved to see a more Perrin axe.
Yeah, a more double-headed Perrin style axe would have been absolutely fine for me. Totally.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, but I do like the idea that maybe they're power rot, so it doesn't matter. That's why they're shiny. That's why they're...
That's how I can make it work in my head, is it's a dumb design and they're too shiny. They're power rot.
Right. So they don't bend. Strength doesn't matter, so you can come up with a stupid design that doesn't need to be supported. You don't have to sharpen them. You don't have to polish them. Yeah. I mean, that's a perfectly good reason, to think about it. Do you think Landsword is power rot at this point?
Yeah. I just choose to believe that in general.
We have to wait and see if we see anybody sharpening a sword.
Yeah.
She's not a companion. She's barely company. Great line. Yeah, great line.
Steppen completely has Lan's number. The look
absolutely.
that Lan sends over at Nynaeve when she gets mentioned is just... this
she's not your type chemistry. Of traveling companion.
I've never understood your type because she is absolutely your type. Stubborn as a mule, which again, stubborn as a mule is applied to Two Rivers people all the time. Tom used it to refer to Matt last time. Matt and Nynaeve are basically the same person in so many ways. This is so cute. So excited for Nynaeve. Yeah, Grace, that is exactly, like, that face is, he is smitten. That's what that face says. It's painfully cute. No, he's not quite, he laughs more. This Lan definitely laughs more and has more facial expressions and is just generally more emotive than Book Lan. But it's incredibly low levels of emotion for a movie actor. So I think that he's splitting the difference really well, and I really believe his Lan, even though he is more emotive than Book Lan. Because Book Lan is a really frustratingly boring character in a lot of ways, and the show needs to move it along with keeping him interesting. This is an incredibly stoic performance for TV. So we'll give it to him that he's being a super stoic, stone-faced person. And Daniel Henney said that he learned a lot about stillness and not emoting really heavily to do this character. So he's clearly learning, he's learning something about himself, which means he's having a good time acting, right? But also, clearly this was a stretch for an actor to do this. So, there's that reason to also believe that this is a really epic performance, and it's very, very Lan. Specifically, Daniel's Lan. Laniel. I've seen him coined because he's very different than Book Lan, but he's very awesome as show Lan. He's a lot more emotive. He laughs and he emotes more than Book Lan because the level of stoic that Book Lan has would never work on screen. It just would not translate. Like, this is a very reserved, stoic character for TV.
Can I also say the stoic, reserved character that we see is from the eyes of the Two Rivers folks and from mostly Rand? And, like, I'm not sure how accurate they're just the same way that, like, Aiel, they're like, oh, Aiel never show expression on their face. And it's like, do they, or do you just not know how to read it? And I've always thought the same thing about Lan, is it's not necessarily that he doesn't show expression, it's that the Two Rivers boys are just reading him completely wrong. And that little eyebrow is like, yeah, that is a shout of surprise on his face. Like, he does express. It's just, Yes, I am. Jedi's asking, yes, I am suggesting that Rand is an unreliable narrator when it comes to men and men's emotions.
That seems accurate. Nynaeve
certainly has no trouble interpreting his emotions.
No, she's very aware of what is kindling between them.
Stubborn as a mule, too. Yep.
Accurate.
I like that. If she's not careful, she's going to win you over. Like, yes, she just keeps doing the right thing over and over again and following the rules the way Karine likes it.
Moraine?
No, Karine likes the way Moraine is acting, and that's winning her over, because they're both, she's acting within the law and doing the right thing, and Karine's like, yeah, that's actually kind of great. But I don't like her.
She says, if she's not careful, you're going to win her over?
No, it's the other way around.
Yeah, I have not managed to sort out what the fuck this sentence is saying. If who isn't careful, who's going to win who over about what?
If Moraine's not careful, Moraine is going to win Karine over.
To what?
Winning her, like, you know, that phrase of like, if you like somebody or not, don't like somebody, right? Like,
okay.
Yeah.
So why? I'm just. I don't know. This start of this conversation perplexes me.
Right. All right. So earlier they had a conversation about how cold and boring Moraine and Lan were, right? So they were joking about how. Later. Oh, that comes later?
Yeah.
Oh, but like essentially they think Lan and Moraine are, you know, sticks in the mud. And so I get the feeling these two have a little more fun. And that, and Lan and Moraine have a lot of secrets. They don't talk. Moraine specifically doesn't say a lot. And so I get the feeling that there's not necessarily bad blood between them, but that Karine just doesn't like her very much.
Okay.
By reputation.
I just don't see what rules Moraine is obeying to win her over. I don't like how.
She didn't have, not rules, but she's doing the right thing by volunteering to take on a burden.
Okay.
I didn't think it was that complicated of a statement. It was like Moraine is taking your burden from you. If you're not careful, she's going to win you over and make you like her because she's taking on your burden.
Okay. I thought that they were closer friends than that, I guess, is why none of that made sense to me, as I sort of assumed they were closer because of what she says next.
I don't think they like each other at all. Yeah, I don't think they've liked each other at all in the past.
Oh, that was the opposite of the impression I got from how this conversation goes. Jedi Pants, I may very well be irradiating this too hard. That is entirely possible.
Yeah, it's Catherine K. I like what Catherine K. is saying. Moraine, nobody likes Moraine. Like, she is private. She doesn't tell anybody anything. She keeps to herself. She's arrogant as fuck. She thinks she's better than everybody else. She's more powerful than everybody else. She pisses off a lot of other Aes Sedai. They do not like her. If anything else, they're jealous of her power level, right? Like, I assume by default, Moraine is disliked by almost every other Aes Sedai in the tower. And except with a few exceptions like Suan, and she keeps that private. She doesn't tell people she hangs out with because that's private. So yeah, this is like the assumption that everybody hates Moraine is kind of a safe one. She's the goody two shoes who makes everybody else look bad.
I never saw that as a dynamic. I guess that's something I'm learning
go back a second.
Today.
That's like, I respect her, but I do not enjoy her company.
Yeah, this whole exchange makes a lot more sense if I assume that she doesn't like her instead of assuming she does like her. I'm just making a fool of myself on the internet.
But that, like, I'm sure it's going to pass quickly. Like, you're stuck in a room with someone you don't like. Like, of course, he's being sarcastic. It's going to pass real slow. They're stuck in there with no conversation.
Yeah.
Like, all that indicates that talking to Moraine sucks. Being in the room with Moraine sucks. She won't hold up her end of the conversation. And I don't know if you ever talk to somebody who won't hold up their end of the conversation, but you're like, you end up just saying things to fill the time and the air, and you're like, do you care? Is that important? Like, what? Am I making a fool out of myself? I don't know. I'm talking, and you're not.
Yeah. And it does help explain the Two Rivers' people's frustration with her. She doesn't talk. She doesn't explain.
No. And I mean, how classic Moraine is that? How many people are like, Moraine wouldn't tell you a secret if, you know, your life depended on it. Literally. She keeps them to herself. Well, and if you think about it, she's been evading Dark Friends for 20 years, hunting the Dragon Reborn. She doesn't want to volunteer, and she can't lie. So of course she doesn't want to volunteer a single piece of information. And that's because I imagine these are two very friendly people. They love to have, social events and dinners, and like they probably invited Moraine and Lan over one night, and it was like, clink. Could you pass the salt, please?
Everything has meaning. Yeah. There's no light conversation. Everything
no casual conversation whatsoever. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that conversation. We need a trial. She won't cross the Amerlin. Amerlin's not here. How much do you think Leandrin set up the escape?
No.
Because I've heard that theory. No, I don't either.
Yeah, I don't believe it at all. I believe that she's going to turn out to be Black Aja in the end, but I believe that for now she is acting entirely in her capacity as a Red.
The only possibility is that maybe she didn't stop up his ears. That, like, it's not that she didn't not shield him, but she let him hear what was going on, and maybe that's the explanation for the timing of breaking out.
I don't think so. I think she's a Red at this point in terms of her behavior and her motivations. I think she gets called to step into her Black role later, but for now she's pure Red.
Yeah, the only reason I say it is that whole, if he escapes, we could gentle him.
She wants him to escape. I don't think she doesn't take any steps to make that happen. I don't think she dares to do it under Kareen's nose. I mean, gentling a man with only other Red sisters around to see it happen is one thing, but deliberately subverting the Captain General, or even just a Green sister set high above her because she wouldn't know she's a Captain General, that's different. I think. Also, I just love all the props in this scene, like the pen, the quill pen, and the candles behind it. It makes me think of the luxury that they travel in during Egwene's rise to power, and how many servants they need, and how many wagons full of camp furniture and tapestries. And it's just like the Aes Sedai travel in style. They are wealthy women.
I made a note about the heavily decorated chests that were everywhere, and they were using as tables and sitting on, and like all these chests that are everywhere, and then like they're also, everything goes into them when you're done, and they're super decorated. Yeah, no, and I also was thinking, like, where are all the servants who set this stuff up and take it down? Like, we haven't seen any of them. A lot of warders.
I'm wondering about that. Yeah.
Typical warders.
Defensive hands.
Yeah, hey, listen, you don't rest. I'm just saying, you don't rest enough. I'm not pestering you. I just say you need to take care of yourself.
And then because he doesn't sleep as much, because he has to stay up guarding her because she won't rest. It's just their dynamic. I love how much they managed to squeeze out of this relationship for how little screen time it got. They are really good.
It's one of the things that's impressed me the most about the writing is how much meaning I find in every sentence that the characters say. There's not a lot of dialogue, but it all means something. There's not a lot of speeches. They don't mind sitting in silence in between what people say.
Yeah. It's nice for the visuals. And chat's pointing out, and I do agree, there is a shot of some gray clad people in one of the overview shots of the Aes Sedai camp. I guess those are servants, but it seems like they need an army of servants, like one per Aes Sedai, just to keep everything going. So, like, at budget reasons and visual effects reasons, probably. But maybe we have seen some servants, so we can pretend there's more. This is so pretty.
So much. The Tinkers are well painted. Those caravans are impressive.
Oh, God, It's so pretty. The skirts, the pinks, the blues. The hair I have some questions about, but God, I love the sets.
One thing I did have to...
His clothes are getting...
One thing I did have to point out, that shawl on her neck has a bunch of different colors along it. Little emerald, little stripy. Yeah. You were saying his clothes are getting a little nasty?
Yeah, I've seen a few people comment on that, and I've been paying attention to it. And the garments are, in fact, getting dirtier as the episodes go on, proving that the fact that they start out weirdly clean is less of an issue as we go on. They are wearing into their costumes.
Well, and again, winter night, everyone's wearing their Sunday best, their cleanest, their finest, right? And the white cloaks are just in it, sticklers. I think you pointed out the white cloaks were too clean. I'm like, yeah, but, you know, if you wear a white cloak and you don't actually, like, fight anybody because you're a coward, you can keep it pretty clean and pristine. That's, you know, one thing I've noticed about very ineffective armies is a lot of times they keep their clothes perfect. I love that between them. The trust, the, like, if one of us says we go, we go. That's it. You know, for now, we're fine.
They are so siblings. This is such a sibling moment. Of like, we trust each other more than anyone else implicitly. Yeah, I love seeing that.
I often think their relationship, they were probably interacted more than almost anybody else in the Two Rivers because everyone else is out on their farms. She's the mayor's daughter. She's in town. He's the blacksmith. He's in town, right? Like they are both in town more than almost anyone else who's a farmer or a shepherd or anything like that because they make their money from the other villagers, which is not true of Rand the shepherd or Matt the tabak farmer. So they could be, I can see the two of them being closer than almost any of the other Emmonsfield 5 growing up.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Oh yeah, good to see Aram wearing all that color again.
So much color.
So much color. He's such a tinker.
Yeah.
God, this episode does more to, like, Aram is the least, like, he's the least tinker of all of them, and they show that by having him tell them about the tinker beliefs, then be like, yeah, but that's bullshit. Like, he says multiple times he does not have faith in the tinker lifestyle in this episode. Visually and with his words.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're from Whitebridge. Sure you are. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you okay.
Aram doesn't believe that for half a second. He knows.
No, not in the slightest.
In the same way that Tom's like, you've got Two Rivers written all over you, Matt. These two also have the Two Rivers, you know. He's like, coming down, villagers from the Mountains of Mist. What other villagers are there in the Mountains of Mist?
Plus, like, they're clearly lying. Like, it doesn't matter what they say. Like, there's just liar written all. Like, this is not believable. No. Oh my God, his eyes are obnoxiously pretty.
But I really like the idea that what you're creating here in Wheel of Time is someone who has ancestors from multiple different races, and that's normal among many different, like, the 3,000 years breaking caused people of all different eras to cross, and so you don't just have brown people with brown eyes, you have brown people with green eyes. You know, that's a pretty common thing, you know. So
yeah, him and
Dana also, yeah.
Both, which just so striking. And it's almost like, so is he going to be a dark friend? Because Dana turned out to be a dark friend. It's like that an amber eye thing.
No,
like,
worse than, actually.
Oh my God, I know, right? I am so falling for this version of Aram more than I ever did for book Aram. And I am so ready to get more invested in his arc and then just be destroyed.
But I love the cynicism.
It all falls apart.
Love it.
Oh yeah, no, oh God, I am so glad we have him as a more vocal and active participant in the discussion that the Tinkers engender. Sorry, that the Tuatha engender.
So yeah, just a great shot of the whole Tinker caravan overhead, where they're going, the colors. You know, there's so much to see in that, and just the briefest, just the briefest check-in with Perrin and Egwene. That was actually, I almost feel like this scene didn't necessarily need to be in there. I mean, it was good to have that conversation with Aram, but it's more of a check-in to be like, hey, yeah, they're still on the road with the Tinkers.
Well, I think it's saying that they're choosing to go with them and they're still heading east. So that's what this really gives us, is we're heading east to Tarvalon, because that's how we're saying it now, apparently.
Okay, Moiraine.
Disagree. But, oh my God, disagree. But that's important, I think. That's why this scene is here, is to give them their direction. again, and also to set up the idea that we're going to travel montage, so that way when we check in with them throughout the episode, it's like, and days have gone by, and that feels more natural.
Yeah.
Plus, we need multiple scenes of all of the caravans because they're really cool looking, and we deserve as much footage as possible.
The behind the scenes about how they were making and painting the caravans was really, really good. And the decisions. And
I look forward
and like
to
the clothes, apparently they based that off of a culture that had like access to pink dye, so their clothes were pink and gray. And so there's a whole culture that this scheme is based around. I wish I could remember, but go look at the X-ray. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, neat. That's behind the scenes stuff I can get down with. Normally behind the scenes I'm really iffy on, but in this particular case, the world building, I'm excited.
But yeah, no, look at the behind the scenes for this episode, and they definitely talk about the painting of the caravans and where they got the cultural inspiration for the colors, and the basis was the pink, and then they went off of that from there.
Nice.
Balls.
15:30.
Wait, click too high and it resets the whole thing. Right. What's going on with that horse, huh? Why don't you like Matt, huh? What's wrong with the shadow darkness?
Maybe Matt's a cursed person and horses don't like cursed people.
Maybe. I don't know. He couldn't be cursed for anything.
I mean, Matt's normally really good with horses, and now... Yeah.
Interesting that Matt's being the trusting one here and Rand's being the suspicious person.
I'm enjoying that change, especially with Matt being Dagger Matt. And it's like, why are you trusting Tom? Like, it's so
very interesting. Yeah. I actually had trouble. I was like, wait. I thought the voices were reversed. I thought Rand was saying Matt's lines and Matt was saying Rand's lines, just because isn't Matt the one who should be suspicious? I don't... seems weird to me, that's all. I would like to see Matt being a little more suspicious and Rand being a little more trusting.
But given the way that Matt and Tom met, and the way that Rand and Tom met at the end of the last episode, this makes a lot more sense.
By the way, Catherine K has followed up and said the color pink was Peruvian from Peru. Oh,
neat. South America getting some representation. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, I would love to know what's going on with the two of them, but is that not a Hanlon move? Kill another dark friend so you trust a dark friend.
Absolutely.
I also really like that this sort of parallels the beginning of Eye of the World when Rand sees the Dark Rider and then the Gleeman shows up and you're like, wait, is Tom the Dark Rider? Is he the evil one? Like, there is that moment of question when Tom first shows up. That's why he's in the Two Rivers in the first place. He is there as a red herring for the fate. And so redoing that here and being like, oh, maybe he's a dark one. Maybe he's the one setting us up. Maybe he killed Dana to make us trust him. Like, I like that parallel of like, is he a dark friend? When you first meet him, you want, like, that question should be in your head.
Yeah, and I love Matt's whole, like, well, that would be clever, and also good job being suspicious, you trusting woolhead. Like, I'm proud of you. Like, it's such a cute interaction that speaks to their friendship. Totally. And also his eye getting caught in the sunbeam and just being absolutely hazel is really pretty.
I like it that it looks like the sun is coming from Rand, and the side of Matt that's not facing Rand is in the shade. The Shadar shaded Matt is away from Rand, and the sun Matt is toward Rand.
I didn't even think of it like that. I love that. I'm here for it.
Well,
that is the central question of this episode.
Who's the fifth candidate? Is it Logain or is it Nynaeve?
It's definitely Nynaeve.
I think so too. Yeah, but do you think the Dark One thinks that, or do you think he still has Logain in the mix?
I don't think the Dark One gives a shit about Logain. He's 10 years too old. Nynaeve is 5 years too old, and her birth is more shrouded in mystery as far as knowledge goes. I mean, Moraine is meant to be questioning, but I don't think the Dark One's questioning. I definitely think it's Nynaeve. That is who the Dark One's looking for.
And obviously, the Dark One has his minions out there trying to gentle Logain. So it's not like he's not taking care of him.
I hadn't thought of it as a Dark One plot. I figured it was just general Reds will be Reds. Because I don't see Logain as being manipulated by the Dark One.
Okay, so I see the Reds as being manipulated by the Black, right? The Reds wouldn't be as aggressive in gentling men if the Black didn't want that. And so Liandrin, yes, her goals are aligned, but really the whole Reds going around and gentling men is the Dark One trying to take out the Dragon Reborn, using the Reds as his instrument via the Blacks. Gotcha.
So they are going after Logain. In the Dark One is going after, but yeah, I don't think the Dark One thinks he's the real.
No, he's just like, I'm willing to take out any male channeler who may or may not be a threat, because I don't know who the dragon is. So, might as well scattershot, and maybe I'll take him out in that scattershot.
Right, exactly.
That's the whole reason why Owen was gentle. The whole reason why, the reason why the Reds are doing this is because they're hoping that they might catch the Dragon Reborn. Not necessarily the Reds, but the Blacks who are encouraging the Reds.
Right.
Damn it, don't make me like Alana, you bastard.
Oh my god. It's offensive how likable she is.
She's really funny, really cute, as, takes a elevated, fun approach to life.
And is making really good arguments and playing a really important role in how things are going. And is just generally gorgeous. And I love that they have her keeping her accent. They've got people changing their accents for the show, but this is a character where they're like, no, your normal accent is great. Just do that. That helps make you more different from the rest of the cast. It's wonderful.
And a great dress, as people are pointing out.
Oh my God. It's so fucking pretty.
I also like how shaken Moraine is at his power. She thought she had found the dragon, and all of a sudden there's this channeler who may actually be more powerful than the people she found. She is shook hard. This is like when she hears about a false dragon after Rand has proclaimed himself, and it turns out to be Masema proclaiming for Rand, but that shakes her to her core when she thinks she's got the dragon wrong, and this is that same emotion. What?
This
dog?
So much happening right now.
What? Moraine having a dog? What is that? Why is that? How? First of all, dogs don't like Aes Sedai, canonically in the books. That's clearly being changed.
Fine by me. It's a dumb choice. The concept of cat people and dog people is not that easily binned out. It's a silly thing to have aligned in that way.
So it's clear that he's just throwing that out. He's like, no, we are not doing that with Aes Sedai and cats and Aes Sedai. And I always liked it from the...
Yeah.
We have stories about witches with cat familiars, and the idea that cats then hang out with Aes Sedai, and that's where we get those stories from. I always thought that was kind of cool, right? That was a neat, Jordan making our legends based on things that happened back in the day, right?
But it's still a trope for women to have cats and men to have dogs. And it's fun to have that just be completely tossed out. Trope, we're just doing away with it.
The other possibility, it's not a dog, it's another woman. And that she's just using it as a euphemism.
That bitch. I'm less in favor of that than of just imagining that the tower had stray cats and dogs running around getting head pats and scraps from the novices. That's to me much cuter and more believable. But I think the important part of this is not about the dog. The rooster is not the point of the story.
It has to, the water
is the point of the story. And in this case, the water is the fact that Alana remembers who was in and out of Moraine's bed every single night when they were novices, down to the smallest detail. She remembers what Moraine was doing and how she broke the rules and who she broke the rules with.
Right.
I love her imitation
so good.
of delivery.
So good.
Oh, it's so fun.
And I love Moraine's little half smile when she's looking at her being like, you're trying to get information out of me, aren't you? And she's like, yeah. I mean, not, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I know that you know that I know that you know that I know that you know. And also, let's make fun of Karenni while we're at it, because, I mean, we can all agree on that, right?
Let's just say the Captain General of the Battle Ajah, probably not the most subtle manipulator of people.
Yeah. As is evidenced by the "you should have been blue" comment. Like, you're subtle enough, you could have been a blue. And Alana's like, but polyamory though. Like, I need my warders.
Which also, I do wish that was a rule that got done away with. Why does only the green get multiple warders? Why can't a blue have 2 warders?
Yeah, I would have enjoyed that as a change, but oh well.
Yeah, no, but I agree that this is definitely Alana being like, I remember you as a child, and you hang out with Suan and all that. And we'll see.
Yeah, the whole concept that people don't remember that relationship is laughable, and Alana is just telling us that straight out.
Really giving us the definition of the green there. Warriors trained at the last fight at the last battle, as opposed to the reds who are there to take down men who can channel in general. Right.
And it's Alana giving us our explanation of the green. Like, this is the first time an Aes Sedai explains why you're in a nausea, and it is Alana explaining the green. Different scene, but this is who we get this lore drop from in the books.
And we get the blues from, according to Leandrin. We definitely get the reds. We got the, we haven't heard about the whites or the grays or, the yellows.
Or the yellow or the brown.
But we get the main 3.
No, there's so many left to learn about.
4 left.
Also, I noticed the tree roots behind Alana. There's a massive tree up there that's just got its roots all down, and it looks so cool.
What do you think about that 2-tiered torch thing behind them? Sort of split torch.
I think it's very, it's the kind of extra thing Aes Sedai would do is carry torch stands around with them to illuminate the caves they have their prisoners in. Like, it's the kind of extra that the tower would be.
So it gives us, he's stronger than anyone she's ever seen, and just this whole, the last battle is coming. It's coming in our lifetimes. And we see a lot of people express that of like, I joined my group for X, Y, and Z reasons, but I never thought the last battle would actually happen in my lifetime, right? Like, we see it from the Dark Friends, we see it,
Shiriam says that, yeah. Yeah, It's cool to see it from Alana's perspective of like, she doesn't have privileged information. She's just seeing the signs and bringing those concerns to stronger sisters and being like, the end of the world is here. And Moiraine's like, I can't tell you that's not true. So
Deviko pointing out that women have been false dragons, men and women have been false dragons in the past. So
just leaning into that, we don't know boy or girl rebirth. Like, we've literally had female false dragons in the past, and I'm really glad that that's a thing.
Do you think they're wilders?
Oh yeah, have to be.
They wouldn't be Aes Sedai.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess an Aes Sedai could go crazy, but she probably wouldn't get to the point of gathering armies. She'd get put down and buried by the other Aes Sedai.
Also, the 3 oaths would make it hard.
Yeah. So, 3 bells in her hair. Mm-hmm. Am I overthinking it to be counting the number of warders she ends up with and the number of bells in her hair?
Probably. Okay. Unless, it's possible she had another warder in the past and he has died, and that, those are for the 3 warders of her life. But yeah, no.
Chat is with you on this.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just over. It's because it's been 2 hours, 13 minutes on the first half of this episode.
We're almost there. But yeah, I do think that there's a certain amount of, one thing they're also saying is, a false dragon doesn't necessarily, a female false dragon doesn't have to be a channeler. You can have a non-channeler false dragon.
And we have that in the books. We have male non-channeler false dragons. I also like the threatening foreshadowing of, I'm glad we're going to have your strength for the last battle. That feels like it's almost definitely not going to be true. The fact that she says it is like she's either going to be a dark friend, be killed, be co-opted, or be otherwise unable to help. Like, you just told us that Alana's going to have a really messy, long, drawn-out end that doesn't involve helping the side of the light.
I mean, that's true to the books, right? She was essentially useless in the last battle and a vulnerability for Rand. So...
Yep.
It's,
that it's just, even for new people, like, I'm sure that someone like Allie, you know, is looking at that going, oh, she's dead. She's dead. Or she's a dark friend. For people who don't know, I mean, it could be that she's a dark friend, and that's going to be the big problem, is that she's on the other side. But we know she's not a dark friend. I think it's just, we're keeping her being out of commission at the end.
So the bells, I don't think are for the warders, but they do mean she's Arafellan, right? The bells in the hair? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that Narishma also has bells in his hair because he's Arafellan. Yeah, that's their thing. That's their little cultural quirk. They aren't chiming in this. They just look visually like they're not actually chiming.
Do you think she lost concentration for a second? And that's why he was pushing, and that, like, what if we let the Reds gentle him, like, startled Moraine enough that he pushed back?
I hadn't quite put it together like that, but yeah, I bet that is what it is she's shocked enough that she starts to lose her connection, and he's pushing on it actively. So as soon as she starts to let go, he pushes to meet that. I had not thought of why that happened. I thought he just flexed for the hell of it, but I like your theory much, much better, for sure. And I love how they physically lean forward to push on the weave harder. I think that was like, it's just an unconscious physicality of how they're leaning into it. It's so cool. And they got to make his skin glow again, which was pretty neat.
There's an interesting, when the power goes through them, we've seen that with Liandrin and a few others, when they're holding a lot of power, they start to burn they glow from the inside. And you can see how that would be easy to scale up when someone contains and holds too much power. And also how someone else can see them and be like, you're holding too much, you're starting to glow from your cheeks. Like, that's not a good thing, you're going to burn out from the inside. That laugh. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, two things there. One, I like your hair, can I touch it? And two, mispronouncing your name right off the bat. Like, okay, Karen, right? Like,
microaggression central.
Yeah, exactly. Just in that one sentence, she was able to just offend me 3 or 4 times. Really good job on Liandrin. Really made me not like her.
Yeah.
Ouch. Ouch. So where are you from exactly?
Yeah, and I think
you don't look like you're from around here.
And I do think that it is Liandrin doesn't know how to be nice, and so she's trying and it's failing, and Nynaeve is seeing right through her and is blunt as hell, and it's just wonderful. Though I do like the little nod to book pronunciation issues.
Yeah. Yes, I did like that a little bit.
I like that. We understand.
Yes, we understand.
We know the names are hard. Yeah. You might not like the pronunciations. You might not know. Like, that part's fun. But yes, it is a very Karen move of her.
And I also like the 2 characters that are probably most well known for their braids. Liandrin and her honey-colored braids, and Nynaeve and her braid. Like, that compliment of, hey, nice braid. Like, I think that is also, there's so much going on in that just one little statement that she makes. Brilliant writing on that little bit. Brilliant writing.
Yeah. And then Nynaeve just takes control of the situation, and Liandrin falls right into it.
So obviously, she's using Liandrin's interest to get out information about Moraine. What does Liandrin want from her?
Well, if she's a dark friend, and the dark is looking for 5 Emond's Fielders, then she knows Nynaeve's face.
That's a good point. She's been having the dreams of the same 5.
If we're assuming if we assume that, she knows who Nynaeve is and is trying to create any kind of connection she can. If not, I think it's just her being petty about Moraine and wanting to split anyone off of Moraine she can just because she's a petty bitch.
That's the other thing. I think she just doesn't like Moraine very much and is trying to get any information out of her she can.
Nynaeve's way of setting this whole thing up. I think she's being very, very clever here. And I love it. I adore how she sets this up for herself. And I mean, and her smile at the end, that little grin is just, oh.
And it wouldn't be hard for her to know what Nynaeve's name is, because I assume Moraine was like, I'm here with Lan and Nynaeve.
Well, probably
right?
Lan introduced her, but yeah.
Yeah. That when they rode up, Landron's like, hi, Moraine, and who's this person with you, right? Like, what do you think about this, the Grinwells?
It is a condensation of a lot of different pieces of the trip on the road. And they do have a fairly, this again feels like a different version of the encounter that they do have, right? Performing for the Grinwells. Tom's the one who's supposed to do it in this case rather than the boys, but entertaining to pay their way, sleeping in barns, like all of that is canonical to what this part of their story is. And I like the family defending themselves rather than being like poor, simple country folk. Instead, they're like defensive, like they're frontiersmen. They're badasses. I mean, they all die when a Fade shows up, but I like that the family is more than just like comic relief for the sake of having generic fantasy backing NPCs. Mm-hmm.
I also like that we don't have the whole else thing going on with Rand flirting with the elder daughter. Also, we don't have. There's a couple of nods to that, but the boys aren't learning how to tell stories. Tom is like, oh yeah, I'm going to go inside and tell a story. You two can muck out the stables. Like, we are not doing the Apprentice Gleeman storyline.
Yep. And I liked them making Els a small child and having it be Matt's sister protective complex.
That's not Els.
The Els Helga thing is a controversy I have not been able to keep up with at all.
As far as I can tell, in the show, he says Helga, but the subtitles originally said Els.
They still say Els.
They stay still Els? Okay,
just a few hours ago, I was watching that part.
Yeah. So that's, a mistake, or somewhere they changed the name and did not update the subtitles. So maybe in the original script it was supposed to be Els, but they decided it was going to be Helga instead. Well,
nonetheless, I like that they made the Grinwell daughter an actual child to play into Matt's sister protective dynamic rather than the whole weird flirty, like... The Grinwell Cup that Allie and Gus ran about who was objectively the hottest character in Wheel of Time because Robert Jordan is wrong about things. That the whole joke with Els is great, but it was a weird, like, it felt like she existed only to give Lanfear subterfuge in the tower that one time. I feel like that was the entire reason her character was created. So I feel like they did more with her than Jordan did because of this change. Yeah.
I really like the discovery that Els is false in the White Tower. Now, they can be anybody else. It can be any other sister who's not there anymore, like, fine. But, and I like the connection back to Rand. That Rand is, pulling people out of their current place in life and throwing them on a different path, right? All that kind of stuff worked well. I get why they're not doing it. I can see why it's not necessary, and they're not connecting those two. And yeah, this is very much like you said, a condensation of all the different barns. I'm almost expected them to get the dog set on them. That would be. Yeah, for sure. And the doll thing was different entirely from the books. But it lets us know that Matt is going to run into Brakita at a later season. And I'm super happy about that. Super happy about that. All right, well, let's play a little more.
Tom notices the dagger. Or he notices something.
Ooh, I didn't.
Tom totally notices Matt's hand going back there and is like, bro, you're a little trigger happy.
A little quick on the draw.
Yeah.
I love Rand's charisma here.
Yeah, I really liked him stepping into this kind of role for basically the first time. It's like, this will not be the last time he talks someone down at weapon point.
I also love that his expertise on archery tells him what the guy's actually feeling.
Yeah.
That, like, holding it with a fist, you can't let go because you have to open up your whole hand. You're never going to be accurate that way.
Right.
Holding it with tips, it's just a quick release.
Yeah, it's fun.
And then I love that no one noticed they had two arrows pointed at their backs with the boy. Because, like, still kills you. Doesn't matter if it's shot by a boy. They're close enough.
Yeah, I love that their, like, 9-year-old son is like, absolutely, I'm going to shoot the stranger in the back with my bow and kill him. That's definitely going to happen. Love it.
Also, Mom, not using a fist.
Yep, she was actually gonna do that. And, yeah, I love their whole look, the costume. She looks so warm. They look so cozy.
Yeah. And this could be the life that Rand wanted. I mean, this is
exactly the life that Rand wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tom gets out of the mucking stables, but the two boys have to do it.
But I mean, he's a Gleeman, free entertainment. Like, you know.
Nothing more than little spies who exaggerate their own importance. Mean. Not wrong, but mean.
I feel like there's more than just general Aja animosity. I feel like there's interpersonal animosity there. That's the end of a story about why Moiraine betrayed her and is therefore the worst.
Internal affairs. Nobody likes internal affairs.
Boots.
Boots. The boots.
I need those
Even
boots.
Leandrin's got great boots.
I need those boots.
And I also like that a man's coming. I'm out. Peace.
Bye.
I do not sit with a man.
Red tent. Like, the phrase red tent it's just...
What about red tent? Fill me in.
Like a menstrual isolation tent.
Oh.
The red tent. It's just like... I know that's not what she meant. I know that there was literally nothing else she could have said there, but I hear red tent, I hear menstrual isolation hut. It's just, and it's open to all women, no men. Like, it's just got that really, really aggressive gender binary dividing line thing going on.
There is a certain amount of the red menstrual blood. Yeah, I can see where that parallel sort of... It never really occurred to me before, but why the red Aja is the way it is and why it has the color red is sort of that, like, idea that you protect women who are menstruating and they're separate.
Or more accurately, you protect yourself from them. That's actually what the isolation's usually
yes,
for.
Okay. So excuse me for being... I was trying to at least be a little charitable.
Yeah, not so much. And also, the Red Tent was the name of a book. I forget who it's by, but it's like a biblical period piece retelling kind of story. Apparently, according to chat, there's also a mini-series done by the same title. It might be based on the book. Yeah, based on the best-selling novel of the same name by Anita Diamant. I'm pretty sure I was recommended to read that book many, many years ago, and I never did. But yeah, I just the line I had to say it. It was hilariously weird. And I love that. And I was genuinely afraid Nynaeve was going to believe anything Leandrin said. And then she's like, fuck that bitch. And then she has this really honest interaction with Lan and has this incredibly honest exchange that helps further their relationship, makes her not hate Moiraine maybe quite as much as she could. Like, she has this horrible false interaction, and then she has this incredibly honest interaction back to back.
Oh, and I like the idea, there's one red tent, multiple green tents. One red tent for all the Red Sisters, multiple green tents for their all individual Warder and Aes Sedai
says
groups.
A lot, yeah. He's got
the way
number.
He says that line. He's been around Nynaeve long enough to know that her pushing someone into a fire is a very real risk.
It's so good.
So good.
It's so
And her
good.
expression of just like, excuse me? Did he just say that while he was walking away?
Oh.
I mean, I might,
She's like,
but he shouldn't have said
she's
it.
like, you really just said that. It's kind of like when she tried to kill me. She's like, you really tried to kill me. She's like, you really just called me out as a violent person. It's so good. It's also funny. It's like Lan came by just to rescue her from being stuck with Leandrin. And then he leaves again, like right away. Yeah.
And yeah, he's just like, I think he was checking in to make sure she didn't believe anything. And she's like, no, she's a snake. He's like,
yeah.
Cool,
then in that case, I will give you the space you clearly want.
No Elias.
No Elias, but lots of beautiful wagons.
Lots of beautiful wagons. Great shot.
Also,
Great shot.
we were lucky to meet you. A Taviran or maybe two Taviran, possibly. It's like, look, that is how that works.
And good God, does that not look like a stole
Oh my
around
God.
her shoulders?
I can't believe how much I didn't notice that before. It's incredible. And it's with a very prominent red stripe.
Yep. And it looks a lot like Suon's stole. The way she's got that sort of, in the promo shots we've seen, the way she's got that sort of collar that comes down and around.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Aram
and
is
then
gray.
Hila, and I love her outfit so much. Every piece of it. I'm, again, not sure if I should be uncomfortable about the hair or not. I'm assuming I shouldn't. I'm assuming that this was designed well enough that I'm overthinking it. But her outfit has so many beads and stuff on the belt, and there's so much going on with her
I'd encourage you to do the research and make up your mind one way or the other. Because it's, I want to know if it's problematic or not. But
well, the thing is, she as an actress is Irish, so I'm inclined to think that she would recognize harmful tropes if they came up. Whether or not she would care, I don't know. But I'm inclined to think she would recognize them and maybe have like input on her costume and her hair the way other actors in the show have. So I'm hoping for a bigger behind the scenes at some point with her about that, I guess.
I mean, again, straight out of the books, right? Like, there's so many implications, thousands of years, since they broke with the Aiel, they're the old traveling people. That is very much book, again, true, as far as I can tell.
I like the delivery better than in the books. I like Hila being this very fountain of wisdom guide through the process rather than this weird, like, sideways conversation between Elias and Rain where Hila's, like, adding commentary in this backseat driving kind of way. Like, I like this much more direct delivery. It feels more correct to me.
Her delivery is great. I'm really glad they hired the quality of actress they did, because some of these lines are hard to pull off and not sound corny.
She is one of my favorite actresses of all time. She's fucking phenomenal in everything I've seen her in, doing so many different characters. She is a stunningly talented actress, and she does wonders with Hila's whole everything. I mean, we'll get to more of that in part 2. Yeah, she's just amazing.
There's a very wheel of time-ness to that. The leaf falls, it nourishes the tree, that creates the new leaves, and that's the cycle. It's a yearly cycle with the tree, but, the wheel of time turns. It's basically Moraine being like the wheel weaves.
Pretty much. Because that's what the wise old woman character is supposed to say in this world.
Have we heard Moraine say the wheel weaves is the wheel wills yet?
Yes, I believe we did in episode 1. At least in the recap of episode 1 but I'm pretty, she definitely says it in the recap for episode 2 of episode 1. She might actually say it in episode 1 also.
Again, that little subtle, like, you promised me these things based on the philosophy of the way of the leaf, and it hasn't come true. I'm still
waiting.
Why should I believe any of the other things that you say? There's that certain amount of he is questioning his faith.
Yeah. And she's saying patience, grasshopper. And it's not enough for him at this point.
And we see that later in the conversation with Perrin, where she's like, not my lifetime, not anyone's lifetime. Just like sometime in the future when I'm reborn, I'm hoping that things will be better, right? Like we're working towards a better future, but not in any near
But that's a
term.
very esoteric and out there way of looking at the world that young men are disinclined to agree with.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. Yeah, so at first I was like, how does she know he picked up an axe? And then I went back and watched and realized his reaction to her saying axe, right? That because I was like, this next line didn't make sense to me until I realized he had a reaction to that word.
Yep. The thing is, he would have died if he hadn't picked up the axe. Like, that's the frustrating thing about in the books and here in the show is that, and what Perrin struggles with is sometimes it's die or do violence. And it's like, well, has it been better or worse? And it's like, well, of course it's been worse because he had an accident, but otherwise there would be no life. So like, it slightly cheapens the argument to me when it's unwinnable in that way.
The problem is if everyone everywhere stopped doing violence, it wouldn't be violence. Except for the Trollocs, right? Trollocs are, like, there's this whole thing where we have non-human, non-sane, non-human violent creatures that you're like, you can't convince a Trolloc not to be violent. You have to, we're in a world, I almost think the way the leaf works better in our world than it does in theirs.
Yeah, we don't have Trollocs. We just have oil tycoons and brainwashed children of, intergenerational wars. Anyway.
But yeah, no, I mean, I have always said I love the way of the leaf. The idea that if everyone everywhere just stopped doing violence, violence would stop is so very true and yet at the same time simplistic, because a lot of times the reasons for violence have to do with resources. And it's like, well, if everyone stopped doing violence, does that mean people wouldn't be starving anymore? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject that the way of the leaf is a great nucleator for conversation on.
It is simplistic, but at the same time, like, I agree with it. Like, I really do think it's a good idea.
No.
And I really do think people jump to violence way too early, especially in this country. We have guns that are way, way too prevalent. We have a military that's way too overfunded and a police force that has military-style weapons that they shouldn't. So, yeah,
a little bit of way of the leaf in that system would do a world of good, literally.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about nonviolent interventions. Maybe a little way of the leaf with the police. That's all I'm saying. Solve a lot of problems in our country. Maybe have the IEO police force have also a little way of the leaf involved, right? Like,
honestly, that's probably going to happen. Is the lost ones are going to they're going to find their way back to the tents in more ways than one, and Giotto will get a little bit back to its roots. That will probably happen in the Fourth Age.
I imagine it would. Yeah. And again, I have to talk about that cut. I know it's from the sun to the light, but that light is right. The sun is right where Rand is standing. It's very much, again, Rand is the sun. And
this is the scene where we get him blowing out the candle in the box, and that shot from the trailer. I mean, so yes, I agree. The relevance to Rand is present. Yeah.
He's like, oh, here's a pitchfork for you, a pitchfork for you. I noticed you're a gleeman. Would you could perform instead of hauling shit? Yes, I would. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Tom sees that. That makes Tom think he's having some channeling sickness.
Tom has already fully got his hypothesis worked out. Yeah.
It kind of upsets me that Tom's wrong. Tom is so good about putting different pieces of information together. And I get where he has no idea about the Shadow Logoth dagger, but, I'd love to see him seeing Tom have a miss is weird.
Especially so early on, when they really need to establish his reputation. But also, how was he supposed to guess cursed dagger? This is the closest thing that makes sense, and it's like him to try to find an answer and not just write things off because he doesn't understand them.
And in a lot of ways, male channeler, way more common than cursed dagger.
So much more common. I mean, how often do people go into Art Hall? Basically never.
I mean, we do hear that there hasn't been a visitor for thousands of years, right? So, or hundreds of years, maybe.
Centuries,
I think is what.
But it's yeah.
So no one's lifetime.
Yes, very much so. And I don't know if I'm not a big fan of the whole having people vomiting on camera thing that seems to be in every show that I watch.
It always looks fake to me.
I don't appreciate it. I don't need it. Like, just give me the body language from behind. I don't need to see fake vomit, please. But I do like that they're making his sickness from the dagger more apparent rather than just he's feverish. How do you display feverish without just spending tons of time on a sweaty face? Like,
he's nauseous.
Yeah, and that's cool.
And we're getting, what we'll see here in a second, the black
Which
stuff
is like,
coming
is
out
he
of his mouth.
spreading it already? Like, is he dripping it everywhere he goes already? It's out! Ah!
He's spreading the corruption of Shadow Logoth wherever he goes. And that's why the Fade shows up. The Fade is attracted to the corruption that he just vomited out.
So you think it's not the dagger, it's the vomit. Mm.
And that's why the Fade went to the place where he vomited, not the place where he was sleeping.
All right, I can buy it.
That this corruption on the ground is really what the Fade is tracking and being attracted
And it's not
to.
like this farm is going to become a new arid hall, like it's going to like die out from the natural goodness of soil microbiology or whatever, but like...
I imagine it doesn't have critical mass to keep spreading.
Right. But long enough to signal.
But I imagine this farm might always be a little corrupted. It might also always be like a nasty place where nothing
there's also
really
going to be
grows.
4 ghosts haunted by a violent death at the hands of the shadow. So there's a bit of a curse going on regardless.
But yeah, that stuff on his lip that almost looks like it's embedded in his lip. It's so nasty.
Yeah, it's really gross. This whole... I love that they've made it so disgusting, but also, ew!
Yep. Shadow mold. It's
Mold
like it's inside of him.
Mold inside is not good. No.
Thank you,
It's
Helga.
so funny that she doesn't give her name as part of the dialogue, and then there's name confusion about her.
Why do you think she doesn't go right back?
Because she's a little kid who's
She gives
curious.
the message. Totally. Not suspicious, doesn't think about the strangers, just like, oh, there's new people.
Yeah,
I'm
she
curious.
lives an isolated life. New people are fascinating. Stranger danger is not something that she has to live with all day, every day. This is novelty.
Later, he finds her dead in the yard. I'm wondering if she was killed on the way back from giving him the bread. Why else would she be outside?
It's just the timing, because like Rand and Matt like talk, and then they blow the candle out, and then he has the dream. Like, it feels like the deaths happen as the dream happens.
I see. I think the Fade's just.
I feel like the Fade needs time to get there, and like I feel like the murders happen minutes before they find them. But maybe she's sneaking out to see if the strangers are doing something. Like maybe some part of her fascination with them is why she's outside as opposed to in bed, where she should have been.
Oh, he's bitter about that one. Are they safe with Mama and Papa?
Nope, they are being neglected unless the neighbors are popping in to take care of them enough.
I also have to wonder at the dad and sexual abuse. Someone who's that cheating, that willing to, without Matt there, you gotta wonder.
I mean, they're really young kids. I'd like to not have that be part of Abel's shittiness.
Same. But his reaction was not positive. That's all.
I think he's worried about the neglect. The fact that their girls could set themselves on fire or fall down a well and the parents wouldn't notice. I think that's what his anxiety is flavored by.
So, yeah. We hope that there's not sexual abuse going on underneath the... I don't think... There's no indication.
He has to be redeemable.
There's no indication.
He has to be a redeemable character. Like, he will make a great third-tier general in the last battle, and that means he needs a redemption arc, which means that he's just sad. That has to be the problem with him, is that he's just sad.
It's the cheating that really sort of, I was like, is he just...
No, that's grief cheating. That's not perversion. She looks at the sky.
Also, the fact that she protects him, that Brigida protects her, and then he takes the doll, and then she ends up dead because she doesn't have her protection.
Yeah, she looks at the sky like she's listening to someone. She makes a decision. There's, so good. The wump. The wump is so good. That smile.
Smile. And Brigida, I mean, just because we know about the relationship between Matt and Brigida and the foreshadowing that that's throwing in there, like, that's so adorable. Because we love their relationship.
So
and like,
and I mean, you know that we're all going to be worried, like, did you cut her? Did you cut her? Did you cut her? I feel like Rafe just said, don't make me tell you no for the next 4 years. No, we're not cutting Brigida.
I love how much he makes Owen sound more like Matt. Right? In the original story, Owen is a responsible young man who's like upstanding, and that's very Randish. In this version, Owen is this sort of rascally in and out of trouble person, which is much more Mattish. And so he sees Owen, or he sees Matt or Rand in Owen.
Yeah, and I was so glad that we got this story, which is more or less verbatim from the book. It's a little changed, but mostly it's just, Tom's backstory is solid. We're good. We don't need to change anything there.
The animals having their hair up, he's sort of seeing that as, but that's again the shadow
and the
of Logan
snapping
thing. That's not necessarily
personality change. Mm-hmm. Like, it looks the same from the outside. The symptoms are the same.
It looks. Or broke down the door.
Like, and is this the moment when Rand is starting? Because he asks what happens to Owen, and like he's definitely thinks that he thinks he channeled.
Do you think he?
I think he's wondering if he channeled because breaking down the door felt weird and it surprised Data. And he just asked that follow-up question of like, what happened to him? Like, he's taking this in.
He could be concerned about Matt.
But I think that I don't think he knows he channeled. I think he's wondering if he channeled. And it's either his best friend or it's him. I mean, he has reason to be concerned either way. Right.
He's not staying with them for that. He's like, I'm staying with you as long as I can. It's like, yeah, not another hour-ish? Maybe?
4 or 5 hours, I think.
Yeah.
That was an illegal gentling, just like in the books. That was completely illegal. Definitely happened, I think, 10, 20 years ago, whenever that was in the books. I don't think they're changing that in the slightest. Yeah.
10 years, 10 years.
I don't think they're changing that. I think that's just when in the timeline it was, for sure. For sure. I agree with chat that Rand and Matt will not be heading east to Tar Valon as of this information coming into their lives.
There is a certain amount of like, do we want to go to the place where they're going to gentle one of us? Not a good idea.
Yeah, and then I have a rant after he drops the Gleeman thing. I have a whole a whole squee. So.
As a Brown, I thought you might have something to say about that.
As a Brown, as a fan of Broken Earth, as a fan of the world of Pern.
Lorists, yeah.
Gleeman, knowledge keepers, the people that keep information, the history keepers, storytellers. These are some of the most vital parts of human society. They are an incredible piece of storytelling in general. In Broken Earth, the knowledge keepers are also seen as silly / dangerous, right? They exist in a very similar place as Gleeman. In the Pern books, Harper's, very, very similar position. This is, and it's true in real life, right? Like how many, fascist governments crush the arts and push back on creativity and push back on history and rewrite history and forbid history and think that, telling the true story about actual history is seditious to the state or whatever organization. I love that Tom's already this person in the books. I love that they're spelling out stories are what holds this all together.
I also think he's lying. He's also covering up the fact that he's not just a simple Gleeman. When Rand says, an awful lot for a simple Gleeman, he's like, well, simple Gleeman, blah, 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 blah. But he's also, what he's not saying is, I'm not just a simple Gleeman. I'm also a bard. I'm also a court bard who's been involved in court intrigue and has this whole past that I'm not necessarily telling you about because I'm making a simple Gleeman be more complicated than it actually is.
Sure. That's very true. And it's also funny when he says there's nothing as dangerous as a man who can remember the past. Speaking to Rand, who is the whole LTT thing, and then moving into Logain, not much longer in the episode, who's literally thinks he's being told things from the past. Like, and he's very fucking dangerous because of that.
And don't forget Matt.
Very
who
dangerous.
Has a few issues with, they're dangerous with some memories of man. He remembers the past because he has the memories of men who lived in the past. And he uses that information to be extremely dangerous and essentially win the last battle, or the battle part of the last battle.
Yeah, very, very much so. So yeah, this just, I was squeeing happily in Brown Aja and associated fandom things very much for this.
So I was watching this with Never, episode 4. And in this scene, we got to about here. And she goes, "Oh my God, are those warders snuggling?" And like her voice just went up to like 20 pitches. And I was like, yes, they are. Yeah. And like she was so ecstatic to see that. Just casual, male lovers in a show just cuddling by a fire and like to just pan by it like it's no big deal.
That's
like
soft, domestic, like men are getting touched, they're snuggling, they're lovers, and then Alana comes by and all three of them are clearly going off together.
Off to fuck.
The amount of wonderful physical chemistry in this like tiny little plot on the side is just like, mwah, it's beautiful. I love it.
And they did such a good job in not making a big deal about it.
Yeah, just from Nynaeve's like, I'm from a sheltered village and I've never seen that. I'm recalibrating on the fly and that's part of my character development. That was the biggest deal they made of it. And that's more for Nynaeve than for anyone else.
I was going to say, and that had more to do with the fact that she was like, oh, Warders and Aes Sedai fuck. Is Lan not available because he's fucking Moraine? Right? Like, that's what her calculation was. It had less to do with, oh, there are two of them, and more to do with, oh, Warders and Aes Sedai are
And she probably has not seen a triad before in the Two Rivers. So it's like, you've got some Warder education, and you've got some we're not in Kansas anymore education. But it's much more about her. And yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it's just like, oh, men being soft and cuddling together. This is like, oh, so cute.
And just the casual gay representation we've all been asking for in so many TV shows.
Not
just
forcing it in our faces.
And they're not minor characters.
There.
And they have lines. My God.
Good lines, too. Really funny lines. They get the comedy of this scene, and it's a funny scene.
And also this has vibes of like going to see your parents or your significant other's parents for the first time and they bring out the baby photos. Like she's getting all of the stories about Lan. They're telling stories about Lan to Nynaeve. That's what you do when you see chemistry between two people. And you're like, let me tell you about when he was a little stinker. Like that's very much, they're trying to embarrass Lan because
they like it. They want these two, like, now kiss. Like that's what they're, and Nynaeve's having a great time because these guys are fun. I love that the Warders are more domestic and more emotive and more, they don't feel like this weird bodyguard. They feel like equal partners. And this energy is so comfortable. You know what's really going to break me up about this though? The younglings and the rebellion. No! You can't give me so many really fun warders and then be like, oh yeah, by the way, there's going to be a huge battle and they're going to slaughter each other. This relationship, this friendliness, they're going to turn on each other. Oh, I hate you for making me think that. I mean, I assumed one of these two was going to die in this episode. Yeah, I was kind of surprised that we didn't get that. I mean, we have Alana sort of kind of saying, go, I'll hold them back, and keeping both of them back with her, but we know she lives, and it doesn't even look like that epic of a death. It's just her being like, I'm the green, I'll be the last one out. Yeah. Oh.
Everyone is like, really? Like, that's impressive. Everyone knows what the skill it took to track down.
She knows what that sentence will mean. The fact that he keeps asking how she tracked him and she won't answer, she knows that that's going to carry so much weight in this conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't pry. Not why did you track him? Not what, just, you tracked him down. Yeah,
it's like, okay, we don't need context. We don't need details. We just need to know that the reason he's interested in you is because you are scary good at one of the skills he's scary good at. And Ivan is the one who dies of Alana's warders in the books, but because we aren't in the Two Rivers with them, I have no guesses as to if either or both are going to die or how, because we're so far out of that plot line. But it is Ivan who does die in Shadow Rising, which is, yes, the black one, unfortunately. And the white one is Rafe's husband, right? I'm pretty sure that the white one of Alana's warders is Rafe's husband. I'm sure I read that like a year and a half ago. Chat, yell at me if I'm wrong.
You, but
no, chat. I wasn't being surprised. Someone help! I need an answer before we put this to press.
Yeah, people are pretty. No one else is agreeing with you here.
I remember that from when the casting got announced. That was. I haven't heard it since. Okay.
Are you sure he didn't want him to be his warder?
I mean, maybe, but Kayla's off researching for me. Thank you. I could have sworn that was a thing.
I do not remember that in the slightest, and I feel like that would have been significantly caught my attention. But then again, I smoke weed, so it's possible I just forgot.
Oh, and I'm also being corrected by chat. It's not Ivan who dies. It's Maskim who dies. Okay.
I could have sworn it was Ivan.
No, it is Maskim, because Ivan we actually see on screen. Okay, so the black one...
Oh, that's right. They changed the names. That's what they did.
So the black one actually is the one who lives if we go with who dies in the books.
Oh, God. Jesus, I'm finally getting, popular stuff when I search for Wheel of Time instead of the wiki. I'm getting Deadline.
Okay, according to the Wheel of Time wiki, he is in a relationship with Rafe Judkins. According to WoTPrime.fandom's the wiki, I have found that information.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Whew! Okay. Fuck. Oh, and then there's an Instagram post in chat from Rafe about when your boyfriend spends Valentine's with his eyes to die instead.
Yeah, okay. That's funny. I did not realize that.
Awesome. I'm glad I wasn't making that up.
And so they're Maskim and Ivan in the show. Is that their names in the books too? Or I see now I'm just dumb. I've run myself in a circle and totally confused myself now.
Yeah, everything I'm finding is about the show when I look it up. I'm like, I want...
Same. Yeah, I'm having the same fucking problem. I'm like, why? Give me back the...
Okay, thank you, Fire Phoenix, giving us the links we need. Ivan and Owen. So it's very close to Owen in the books. It's Owen.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's not.
So they've changed the name to not sound like Owen, who was just introduced in a prior scene.
Got it. Got it. So the Maskim.
Yeah, they changed his name, but nothing else about him, which is fine.
And Owen is the one who dies in the books?
Because Ivan we actually see on screen doing things afterwards. So, which is also why Owen's name is harder to remember, is because he dies off screen without ever making an impression.
No, Owen dies, so Ivan's the one who's still alive. Gotcha. Yeah. God, I just... Okay, I've been around a bit on that. My brain just didn't want to absorb that. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know why I had so much trouble with that.
Because we're
moving on.
Over 3 hours. Yeah, that's why. I look fun.
Knowing that's Rafe's boyfriend, I'm like, he definitely wrote that line in.
Yeah, totally. Also, love his accent, not being just smashed into some British bullshit.
like that. What does that make you? They don't serve the servants of all. They are just proud of them. They're just proud to protect them and to help them do what they do.
It is a kind of service, but it's not the service the way that Nynaeve means it or the way that the world at large sees it. It's an important distinction for them, is like, we protect them. We make it possible for them to do this important work. We don't serve them except when that is incidental behavior for protecting them. Like, that's, I love this exchange. It's really says a lot in very few words, as the writing of this whole episode does.
Yeah. I've been working for a chef lately who I really respect, right? She's really, really, really good at her craft. She makes delicious food. And I kind of feel the same way, where I'm like, I don't serve her. I work for her. And I make her food according to her recipes. But I'm not serving her. I'm proud. I'm proud of the food that I put out because she is such a good chef. And like, yes, I work for her, and I can see that relationship is very similar, but it's my job to make sure that the food is the best it can be, even though it's her food. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and that, a lot of times that involves doing dishes and, you know, throwing out rotten food and, you know, relabeling things and boring, dumb, menial tasks that look like service, but you know, it ends up being in the service of better product and result. And so I can see where he's coming from there. She licks her lips and gives him a nod like, yeah, let's go.
The body language is so good. It's so good.
It also isn't entirely clear here, though, that Lan isn't also banging
yes.
Moraine. Right? The language he uses is very similar.
I think because we are in Nynaeve's POV as much as we're in anyone's POV in this, and that's what her question is. So we are, even though we as the omnipotent people, like, we know they don't because of the bath scene, but Nynaeve is very much wondering that. So that's, I think, why this is arranged the way it is.
And I'm not entirely sure that the bath scene was obvious, to be perfectly honest, that they weren't banging.
Yeah, Brandon also
because of the ambiguity. Yeah, I think that's what I'm referring to. Like, the ambiguity so often in shows, we cut before the action happens, and here they cut because there was no action, and it looks similar even though it's two very different worlds.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that there is ambiguity because it's not just one clear option. I like that it's like, well, what is it? Like, was this one thing or the other? And I like the ambiguity, even though I know we all know what the facts are.
Lan's actually tired, though.
He is actually tired, and yeah, it's I think everything in their body language, Lan and Moraine, it's clear that they're not fucking, but I can see how there is ambiguity for people who don't know what they're looking at. And I mean, he might be joking here too, to mess with Nynaeve's head and to get back a little bit at
that's
the
entirely
orders.
possible.
I mean, I think Lan's more comedic than Book Lan, which is fine.
But yeah, obviously he's not going to go bang Moraine. That's not what they're doing here.
This is a really important conversation for them.
It's about grief.
Mm-hmm. And doubt.
In my opinion.
He already knows what she's thinking.
She's worried. She's worried that Logain is the Dragon Reborn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he can tell that. I mean, he leaves so many steps into the conversation. I like that, because they've been doing this for 20 years.
I think that's super important, and
Agreed.
I think it's true. I think the Dark One has no idea. I mean, he's got one of the five, right, as they do.
Same to the book.
No specifics.
They're all flailing, and I love Lan's response. I don't know if it's terrifying or comforting. Agreed. I don't know either. Yeah.
It's good the Dark One doesn't know, but oh my god, nobody knows? Jeez.
Right? Nobody's in control of this at all.
Notices a lot of women grabbing men's finger rather than their whole hand. We see that with Perrin and Layla a lot.
Men have big hands. It's just a thing. It's annoying. As a person with hands that haven't grown since I was literally in 5th grade. Yeah.
Never gets annoyed with how big my hands are.
So there's two really cool things about that. First of all, the fact that they're making the physicality of the bond, like we see with Elaine and Brigida later, move forward and just be regardless of gender combos. That's great. The other thing that's great is that women are traditionally too emotional, and only men are the rational ones. And for Lan to say, you are normally emotionless as a stone, and the only reason this is happening is because I have induced a weakness. And that just flips the trope version of women being emotional messes and out of control and all of that. It just throws that in the dirt. And I love it.
I also really like the fact they're shoulder to shoulder here, and she's not wearing her shoulder pads, which would normally insulate her from physical intimacy.
I didn't even notice that. She's smaller and more vulnerable, and he's able to get closer in. Oh, I love that. I didn't even... Oh, that's great. Yeah, they're such partners. They're just such partners.
And that's what I like about it, is like, let's not have a romance, let's have partners.
Yeah, and like, and the way she grabs his hand is like, these are partners, like being like, fuck, we fucked up, but we're still a team. We are still a team. And it's, God, it's refreshing. It's so refreshing to not have sexual tension in every goddamn interaction. I mean, and the sexual tension with Nynaeve, fucking amazing. Like, it's not like they don't have it in the show. It's just that it's not in this relationship, and it's great.
And I think at this point, that's where we're going to leave it. We're going to come back on Thursday and finish up this episode. We're going to start back with the Tinker's Rumspring. He talks about the Rumspringa.
This is just a party. The Rumspringa is the whole going away thing. But yes, we will...
Well, yeah, yes, but they talk about it in this.
It has been 3.5 hours almost of us recording. So thank you for joining us.
This is ridiculous. Thank you so much.
We will definitely need to have our brains refreshed before we can go into the second half of this episode, which is so full of lore and characters and costumes that it's going to come out to like 6 hours in total, I think.
I said 2.
And yeah, so remember to like the video, comment on it, follow us on social media, go rate and review the Amazon show, go rewatch it. Let's see. Yeah, support us on Patreon. These videos are definitely driving Seth a little bit bonkers with the editing. So, give us some sweet dopamine and cash to help us be motivated to do that. And otherwise, look both ways before you cross the street, because it's good life advice.
Thank you for joining us here at WoT Time Spoilers Podcast / video chat. We will see you next time for the second half of this episode.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?